Welcome to our annual convening meeting. My favorite legume dish is dal makhni, which is made from lentils. I personally don't know how to make the dish, but I enjoy consuming the dish.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the annual virtual convening of the Legume Systems Research Innovation Lab. We're delighted that you can join us once again this year. My favorite legumes recipe is black beans and rice. It derives from my days of living in the Caribbean and the delicious meals that we shared not only with family but also with friends. The recipe for this item can be found on the internet somewhere because I have no idea how to make it. I'm more on the consumer end of legumes than on the producer end. So if you need to find out, you can always look it up. But make sure to check it out because it's the best meal ever.
Good morning, good afternoon, depending where you are, and welcome to the annual convening meeting. Cowpea cooked with smoked fish, rice, and vegetable is my favorite legume recipe. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to our Legume Lab's annual virtual convening. Speaking of legumes, let me share my favorite legume and the way to make it. My favorite legume happens to be garbanzos or chickpeas. I come from India, and garbanzo beans or chickpeas are pretty commonly cooked and consumed on a daily basis. The way to have garbanzo beans is to pressure cook them until they have completely softened to touch. In a separate pan, fry in a little bit of oil thinly sliced onions, sliced garlic, crushed tomatoes, and crushed ginger, about 1/4 inch. And then add any of your favorite spices, be it cardamom, cloves, cinnamon, whatever you feel like in terms of aroma. Then add to this some of your favorite ground spices, such as turmeric or cumin, and also you can add a little bit of chili powder or more, depending on the spice level you like. Once you cook this curry base down to sort of like a slurry-like consistency, now you add the pressure-cooked garbanzo beans to this and add some water, about 1/2 cup to a cup of water, and simmer them on low heat until it forms a nice, soup-like, stew-like consistency that is quite thick. And at this point, you add some salt to taste. Garbanzo curry or chickpea curry can be served with cooked white rice, or it can be had as a side dish with some thick wheat-based bread such as chapati or naan or even pita bread, which nicely soaks up the juices that come from these garbanzo bean curry. Be sure to try it, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Bye.
Hi everyone, this is Jane Payumo from Michigan State University and a member of the Legume Lab family. I am very happy to welcome you to the annual global convening and excited to engage with you again to discuss progress made and future of one of our favorite crops, legume. Yes, legumes, especially green mung bean soup with chicharrones, will always be part of our weekly menu and at our dinner table. So I'm going to see you in all of the sessions. Take care.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the convening. My favorite legume recipe is black turtle bean soup, cooked with onion, garlic, water, and salt, served with cilantro and crumbled cheese, and accompanied by tortillas de maíz guatemalteca, and I love it because it's delicious.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Legume Systems Innovation Lab Global Convening 2022. I'd like to share with you my favorite legume recipe, which is white bean salad. The featured legume in this is the white cannellini bean. And this is a real favorite recipe of mine because it reminds me of my childhood. I simply take the white cannellini beans, toss them in some good olive oil, add in some chopped celery and parsley, little bit of garlic, just a little bit of white balsamic vinegar, and then my secret ingredient is a few chopped up jalapenos, just to give it a little bit of spice. So hope you give it a try. It's a good one, and I look forward to connecting with you all.
Hi, welcome to the global virtual convening of the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Legume Systems Research. My favorite legume meal is definitely rice and beans. Specifically, I like small red beans cooked in coconut oil with onion, green peppers, and garlic. Even though this meal is great fresh, I find that the flavor is even better the second day when you reheat it. Once again, welcome to the global virtual convening.
Hello, welcome to the convening. My favorite legume recipe is Hoppin' John. Hoppin' John is a cowpea recipe usually made with black-eyed peas or purple whole peas, as seen in the picture. And it's made with a lot of different herbs and spices and onions and celery, and usually served over rice. For many years, I don't know how it happened that way, but it's always been served as a welcome to the new year kind of recipe and dish. Hope you enjoy.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Legume Systems Research Annual Virtual Convening 2022. And this is our public forum, day one. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to sharing innovative approaches and discussions on global legume systems research over the next 2 days. My name is Jan Fierro, Communications Manager for the lab. I will be facilitating our session today. A few details on our meeting format. You can view this session in the Whova platform or on the Zoom platform. In today's session, most presentations are in English, with 2 pre-recorded presentations in French with slides in English. If you need translation to French or audio translation from French to English, look for the globe icon in the bottom menu of either Zoom or Whova. After selecting the globe icon, you can select your preferred language. If you continue to hear an additional language, try selecting Mute Original Audio. Also, if you have any technical difficulties joining in the Whova platform, please select Join in Zoom. If you do join in Zoom, please also keep the session open and available in the Whova platform. This will allow you to participate in Q&A, chat, polls, or to access the session agenda, as all of these features are available in Whova exclusively. I would also like to highlight the poster gallery in Whova, featuring research posters presented by students working with lab projects. After today's session ends, we encourage you to visit the poster gallery and select Visit Booth of the posters you wish to view. When visiting the booths, make sure you scroll down to the handouts where you can download a PDF of the poster for better viewing. I would also like to point out the community feature in Whova. Here you will find additional resources on many topics and be able to engage in ongoing conversations throughout the convening. In the community feature, please feel free to start a new topic or social group just by asking a question. Please note the chat feature in Zoom is limited during this session, so please use the chat in Whova. At this time, we ask that you take a minute and click on the polls tab in the Whova platform and complete our poll of the day. At the start of our meeting today, the legume management entity personnel shared with you some of our favorite legume recipes and dishes. Now it's your turn to share. So please share with us your favorite way to eat legumes. The results of the poll will be shared in tomorrow's opening session. At this time, we'd like to kick off this year's convening with a welcome from Mr. Daniel Bailey, USAID Agreements Officer Representative for the Legume Systems Innovation Lab, who will provide opening remarks. Daniel?
Good morning and good afternoon and good evening to everyone, wherever you may be. Welcome to the annual convening. If you don't know me, I am the representative that manages the Legume Systems Innovation Lab on behalf of USAID, or rather within USAID. And so I'm the one that passes on direction from the USAID Agreement Officer to the management entity, to Barry and John. And so I do want to thank you for being here today, and I want to thank you for all of your hard work. You know, we've now completed 2 years of a global pandemic, unprecedented in its scope and its impact, and but also unprecedented in the ability for us to communicate with each other through platforms like Whova and Zoom, and the vastly increased capacity for connecting globally, instantaneously and with good connections is also, I've seen, has so radically improved and increased in the last couple of years. And so now, though, with COVID seeming to ease, more and more people are getting vaccinated, and the world is slowly reopening. I would like you, though, to remember that there are still many who still are not able to travel or to socialize in person too much still, as young children still are not eligible to be vaccinated in many parts of the world. And there are still no pharmaceutical treatments for children available. So please be patient with colleagues and fellow researchers and staff with their own personal situations. For the PIs, I'm looking forward to hearing on Thursday in our session then from Jerry on the global food security strategy refresh. We aren't doing a massive overhaul. We're just refreshing it a little bit, making sure that all the pieces are still valid. And also from Angelo Records on the refresh of the research strategy that goes along with the GFSS. And from Mark Heising on the product lifecycle framework and the product profile. I know that not all of you will be in attendance at those sessions, but I'm sure that your PIs will share any of the most important details with you. For those of you who have already been working with along product lifecycle framework and product profiles, I want to thank you for your engagement with that process so far. It's still a work in progress from the USAID side. We're really excited about rolling it out throughout the rest of the year, and particularly as new research activities come online. We see it as a real change maker in how we are able to communicate with the rest of USAID, with the missions who are doing the scaling work that you are piloting, that you are contributing to really move that research from the laboratory fields to the hands of small scale farmers, processors, and consumers. I'd like to remind everyone that your work is contributing to USAID's larger goals of a 20% reduction in poverty and stunting in Feed the Future countries in the next 5 years, laid out by the Ambassador Power, the administrator of USAID. And in general, I'm excited about all of the research you're doing and hearing about your updates and seeing your presentations in our discussions. So thank you to the management entity, to Barry, to John, to David for your steadfast work in guiding this activity, especially through everything that's happened in the last couple of years with the pandemic. And so I just want to say congratulations to you on coming into your 4th year of a successful program, and I look forward to what comes next. So thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Next to share a few welcoming words is Dr. Doug Buehler, Assistant Vice President for Research and Innovation at Michigan State University. Doug?
Well, thank you, Jan, and it's always a pleasure to interact with this group. I have very fond memories of interactions with the various iterations of this lab going back now. I'm maybe not quite, I guess, yeah, now 20 years. And in fact, my first trip to Africa many years ago was a convening not unlike this. And I've forgotten a lot of things since then, but I still remember that trip very, very vividly. So this program and the work that you all do has a special place in my memory and in how we look at some of our priorities. So certainly welcome on behalf of Michigan State University. I want to compliment the management team. I thought that was a really interesting welcoming, and really enjoyed that. And it kind of, I guess I should try to top that because nobody wants to listen to an old administrator for very long anyway. But just a few comments. Legume research has been important to Michigan State University almost since it was founded. Dry beans, various varieties have always been important to the Michigan economy. And it is all, I think it has really built a very strong basis for this connection around the world. And if you look at some of our programs, we have some of the oldest and most productive programs in legume research anywhere in the US and maybe in the world. And we remain committed to that as well, and really believe that legumes fit into cropping systems all over the world. And particularly as we look at the challenges of climate change, growing population, trade issues, so on and so forth, I believe that that this work and what you do in this group of plant species and food groups is going to be more and more important as we move forward. And so this is really going to continue to be an emphasis of Michigan State University and our partners. And just yesterday I was in a meeting. We have a new high-level strategic plan, and I'm part of the group that's fleshing out the research part of that strategic plan, and the international work and how we continue to build stronger bridges from our domestic research through our international are a big part of that, and we'll be continuing that in the future. So because of that, this work in this laboratory remain a high priority for Michigan State University. As many of you know, it's been several decades that we've been involved with various iterations, different terms, different titles, but it's really always had the same goal of help feeding the world. And there's very few things that are more important than that. And so we're going to remain very committed to this, working with Barry and John and others to continue to move this forward. And we look forward to continuing to work with you for many years going forward. I think most importantly, while I have a few moments here, I want to thank all of the investigators for the work that you've done, as was previously mentioned, through what has been a very, very difficult couple of years in our history. Being somebody whose job is to help people get their research done, it's been quite an interesting couple of years for us as well. But through all of it, the thing that has really struck me is the incredible commitment of our people to get their job done. We had to do a lot of difficult things and put a lot of restrictions on all sorts of things over the last 2 years, which wasn't a lot of fun for somebody whose job it's to do those kind of things. But people basically want you tell us what we need to do to get our work done. And that was really important. And that really gave us a basis to deal with some very difficult things. And so I want to thank you all for really keeping things on track. And it's really incredible what we've been able to continue to accomplish under circumstances that I don't think any of us ever dreamt we would see in our lifetime. So again, thanks for everything. I really appreciate the opportunity to make a few comments. As I said, this work will continue to be important. International research as it relates to agriculture, natural resources will continue to be core. to Michigan State University. And I look forward to working with all of you as we move forward. So thanks again and good luck for an excellent convening.
Thank you, Dr. Bueller. The Legume Labs Technical Management Advisory Committee, or TMAC as it is known, is one of 2 advisory committees to the lab. The TMAC advises and supports the management entity on strategic planning and research project monitoring and evaluation. At this time, we welcome greetings from the TMAC chairperson, Dr. Jeff Alwang. Dr. Alwang is a professor in the Department of Agriculture and Applied Economics at Virginia Tech University. Dr. Alwang.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever it's relevant. So I am the chair of the TMAC. The TMAC is the committee the investigators in this project mainly interact with we review proposals, we review annual reports, we review work plans, and we advise the management entity on various things, including strategic plans and specific technical issues with each of or as they arise. I'd like to thank the management entity. I'm not going to name names because I'll forget one and then I'll get in trouble. But I'd like to echo Doug Bueller's comment about investigators. You investigators are the engines that make this thing go. We really appreciate your responsiveness to queries that we may have, to suggestions we have, and I think we've had a very good and open dialogue as we've moved through the phase or the life cycle of these projects. I don't have a lot to say specifically, but I would like to emphasize the notion that the Innovation Lab is really a research program. And I think what I would sort of challenge each of the participants to think about during this convening is, what research can we think of that we've experienced or that we've sort of been involved in the last few years. And so one of the things that I've been thinking about is what have we learned about remote supervision of research, remote interaction of research, what works and what doesn't work in this more remote world. I realize we're going back to sort of more of a business as usual type of framework, but I think it's by the end of the convening, I'd like to hear or have heard individual experiences with this remote project or the remote project management that we've all undergone over the last couple of years. What has worked? Are we in a stage now where we can make recommendations to USAID or anyone else about management of these types of research programs? I know, for instance, that travel can be a very, very expensive component of your budgets. I mean, we've seen all of your budgets multiple times. So have we learned anything that maybe could make research more efficient in terms of reducing expenses that we may not have had before? Or have we learned that things don't work so well unless we as scientists convene either in a partner country or in the United States to hash out difficulties and decide how to move forward. So the first thing I'm thinking about is this lesson as what have we learned over the last 2 years in terms of the efficiency and effectiveness and obstacles to more efficient and effective research management. So that's number one. The second big picture issue that I'm thinking of in terms of research is what lessons have we as a project learned from the value chain approach? One of the innovations in this innovation lab has been really the holistic or deliberate integration of activities along the value chain. The idea is that we can, by looking at the different nodes or the different connections along the value chain, we can do more efficient research. That is, we can identify what the real obstacles are. Is it a disease-resistant issue? Is it a marketing issue? Is it a regulation issue? And by thinking instead of like our own little silos in our own little laboratories where we do research, but thinking about the chain as a whole may have, the hope is that the research is more effective and more efficient. So I would encourage you to think about lessons learned from the value chain approach. Okay, what have we learned? How has, and specifically, like what do we see as gains from thinking about this system as an integrated chain that is all the links in the chain need to be effective and need to be strong? How has that affected our own planning for research and our own conducting research and our own dialogue with the other researchers, both in the same commodity space or in the same geographical space or same market space, and how has all of that interaction and recognition of the length of the value chain affected our research? Has it been a really a good innovation? So we'll talk again at the end of this, but you know, this is those are two of the things that I'm listening for as we go through this convening. And I hope that we are able to share our experiences so that we can bring out of this this event that we're having, we can actually learn some higher level type research management issues that I think we have a unique ability to address in this context. So thank you very much, and enjoy and engage.
Thank you, Jeff. Next, Legume Systems Innovation Lab Director, Dr. Barry Pittendry, will share some welcoming words and also kick off our convening. Thanks, Barry.
Great, thanks, Jan, much appreciated. Greetings and welcome to the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Legume Systems Research Annual Global Virtual Convening of 2022. I'd first like to acknowledge everyone's patience and understanding in the rescheduling for this event from its original mid-February date. We value your time and acknowledge how difficult it is when dates change unexpectedly. And as many of you know, this was due to personal circumstances from my side. And I'd just like to thank everybody for your support during this whole process. It's extremely highly appreciated. So over the past year, we've all continued to face personal and professional challenges in adapting to daily life amidst the pandemic. COVID-19 tested us in ways we could have never imagined, yet our resolve and resilience persevered. I continue to be highly impressed by the innovative spirit and determination of our researchers to find solutions that move projects forward in the most challenging and uncertain times. It's actually provided us with a tremendous opportunity, paradoxically, to innovate in ways that we had not thought about before. And as Jeff had just mentioned before, it allowed us to innovate in management styles that I think into the long term are going to be very helpful in us having impact. So, but just as COVID is one hurdle, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that as I speak, many parts of our world are experiencing unrest and conflict. Not only does this create shocks across entire systems, further threatening global food security, it also puts millions of people at undue risk. The UN Refugee Agency estimates that at mid-2021, global forced displacement surpassed 84 million, with 11.2 million people displaced through the crisis in 2020 alone. These challenges, be they natural or man-made, highlight the need for cutting-edge solutions in agriculture to feed a growing global population. Over the next 2 days, we're excited to share updates with each of you on the innovative research that our Legume Lab projects as we embrace challenges and work to be part of a global solution. As many of you know, legumes are a key source of protein for many people around the planet. And that trend will continue, that they'll be increasing important source of protein and providing resilience to people in times of challenges. but it's hard to believe that the Legume Lab projects are slated to conclude in June of 2023, just a little over a year from now. It seems like just yesterday that we were welcoming each other in person in Senegal without masks and getting a first look at exciting research that has unfolded over the past several years. We know that there's much work to be done, research and innovation that will need to span decades and generations. In this spirit, the Legume Systems Innovation Lab embraces our commitment to building the next generation of legume researchers. Currently, our projects support 38 students, including 22 women, as they pursue degree programs globally. And you will hear from several of them over the next several days as they share their research focus and updates. I'm really anticipating these very excited to hear these presentations from our future agricultural leaders. And I'd like to thank all of you that are playing active roles in training these students. We know this is a tremendous commitment, but you're making a tremendous commitment towards the future. In addition, we have hosted a student poster competition. The winners of this competition will be announced tomorrow during our opening session. In the meantime, I encourage you to click on the posters tab in the WOVA platform to view the students' work. We are also excited to announce the first Legume System Innovation Lab Grant Writers Workshop and Starter Grant Competition. 40 researchers from West and Southern Africa, plus the top 2 students from the poster competition, will learn effective strategies on communicating their science in a 2-week workshop led by international science communication expert Mark Bayer of Bayer Strategic Concepts. The attendees will receive individualized expert feedback on how to write winning proposals and engaging narratives to advance their respective priorities. A total of 6 starter grants will be awarded based on the research proposals developed and honed through the workshop. I'd like to close by thanking USAID, Michigan State University, Purdue University, the Legumes Industry Consultative Council, also known as the LINC, the Technical Management Advisory Committee, the TMAC, our researchers, collaborators, and friends who collectively have made the important work of the Legume Systems Innovation Lab possible. I just really want to emphasize what wonderful working relationships we've had with USAID, the management entity at Michigan State University, and the wonderful discussions that we've had with both the LINC and the TMAC. They've dedicated considerable amounts of time and effort to make this a much, much better program. We have tapped into global experts who've committed their time to move us forward in a community. And I strongly appreciate all those efforts. And as a person who still has his foot in research and has many years of research experience prior to taking on this role, I know the time and effort and commitment that researchers make to these programs. These are literally a labor of love, and we appreciate all your time and effort because your work will make a difference over the long term. And in many cases, it's already making a difference. So thank you very much for all that you do. And now to take off our convening, I'd like to welcome a pre-recorded presentation by Ms. Cindy Brown. Cindy is the president CEO of the Chippewa Valley Bean program in Menominee, Wisconsin. Since 2009, she is also the president of the Global Pulse Confederation and leads an executive committee of over 30 international members. Ms. Brown is also a member of the Legume Systems Innovation Lab Legume Industry Consultative Council, or LINC. The LINC is comprised of private sector legume experts who provide stakeholder input to the directors of our innovation lab to ensure we, the management entity, our projects and research outputs remain relevant to the legume private sector for growth and competitiveness. I would just like to emphasize that these discussions with the LINC and individuals within the LINC have been a wonderful opportunity to think to what might be the future of legume systems, a future that may be out of the scope of what we're working on right now, but are thinking towards what's next in legume systems globally. These have been exciting interactions that have made us think about where things may be moving next. And to this, I'll pass this over to watch this pre-recorded message and go from there. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Cindy Brown, and I'm the president of the Global Pulse Confederation. I'm also the president of Chippewa Valley Bean, my family's kidney bean processing business in Menominee, Wisconsin. As a member of the Legume Industry Consultative Council, I'm honored to be here today to share my thoughts. We are in a very challenging time. Global hunger is increasing due to conflict, climate change, and supply chain issues. Food inflation is rampant and expected to get worse. Unfortunately, economic shocks continue to affect food production, and it's our job as a member of society to mitigate them. And there's no better way to do it than through science and research. Pulses are one of the world's most important sources of plant-based protein. In addition, they maintain soil fertility through nitrogen fixation and are considered excellent crops for natural resource management, environmental security, and crop diversification. All of us in the industry are aware of how vital a role pulses can play in future food systems by helping to mitigate climate change, food insecurity, and the protein gap. Agriculture is both a contributor to and a victim of global environmental changes, from the loss of biodiversity to extreme weather events and water shortages. With a population estimated to reach 9 billion by 2050, our current agricultural systems are unfit to end global hunger and malnutrition. Despite their enormous potential, pulses are often underutilized in cropping systems because they suffer from both a technological and a yield gap when compared to other major grain crops. In other words, when it comes to pulses, there is a significant gap between actual and attainable production. As researchers, one of the main challenges you face is bridging this gap between the actual and the attainable. And I believe that gene editing or plant-based innovation is truly a transformational innovation that provides us with a unique opportunity to reduce the technological gap we face in the global pulses industry. Harnessing the genetic resources that nature has provided through technology allows researchers, such as yourselves, to make it possible for farmers to grow crops that are more nutritious, productive, and better adapted to the growing impacts of climate change. And even better, gene editing reduces breeding cycles from 10 to 15 years to as few as 2 to 3 years, which strictly means faster innovation and opportunities. In recent years, we've been witnessing a transition in legume research, whereas the focus was previously on improving yields of economically important crops like soybeans. It's now turning towards underutilized crops like pulses that have the potential to help achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. In other words, gene editing is the key catalyst that will turn pulses' potential to tackle hunger, malnutrition, and global warming from possibility to reality. With the 2030 SDGs deadline looming, the time is now to devote all of our resources and expertise towards the mitigation of the very real problems that threaten the well-being of our planet and its population. Fortunately, this relatively new technology is well equipped for the challenge, with some of the world's most brilliant minds driving it. It also provides excellent flexibility, allowing for specific, localized processes that can be quickly adapted to the needs of particular regions and to provide crops that both farmers and consumers are familiar with. The benefits of gene editing in pulses are endless. By improving disease and insect resistance and increasing drought tolerance, as well as nutritional levels, we can optimize these already exceptional crops to target malnutrition the world over. We're seeing a sizable switch in the way we consume food, and with this, the possibilities for innovation are ever increasing. As the plant-based industry continues to gain traction, we see more opportunities to develop pulses that can be used in meat analogs, dairy alternatives, and protein supplements across the ready-to-eat industry. However, in order to fully benefit from the myriad of opportunities, we must address the way we regulate this technology on a global basis. With the commercialization of plant-based innovation crops in relatively early stages, regulatory frameworks range from non-existent to equivalent to transgenic crop regulations, which in many ways amounts to a ban on trade. Many countries have not undertaken risk assessments of plant-based innovation crops and are in effect prohibiting the import of these products. This is really an important point for a company like mine, as well as all of the other pulse industry producers in the world, because we're really not realistically able to produce, process, and segregate one type of a dark red kidney bean or a navy bean for consumers in the US, or maybe consumers in Germany want a different type of the same class of bean, but a different variety. At Chippewa Valley Bean and throughout the rest of the world, we are excited at the possibilities that gene editing can unlock for us. We want to gain as much knowledge and understanding as possible so we can translate that to our growers, customers, and the end consumers. Closing knowledge gaps in gene editing for pulses is critical to ensure that pulse development and production will continue to increase sustainability. Access to fair and transparent information across the industry is vital to unleash the full potential of this technology and research. At the GPC, we are committed to spreading awareness about innovation in pulses and have a future of food section in the Pulse Pod specifically to achieve that. In it, we explore all that's new in the industry, from plant-based casein to lupin bean ceviche. And researchers play a significant role in this section of our content. We see it as our duty to educate members about the exciting innovation in our field and are delighted to be able to help spread the word about gene editing in pulses, as well as learn about it ourselves. In the same vein, we also offer free GPC memberships to researchers. It's part of our ongoing endeavor to widen and diversify our very extensive community. The importance of helping stakeholders in all countries understand the difference between plant-based innovation and transgenic modification cannot be underestimated. We also need stakeholders and our consumers to understand that. While we support plant-based innovation, we will never compromise when it comes to customers' trust and high industry standards surrounding food safety and the environment. We need to translate our science into understandable benefits for the consumers, whether that be price, product attributes, or environmental advantages. Clear standardization information is really important to building and maintaining consumer trust around gene-edited products. If we fail to do so, we risk halting the process of this amazing work before it's even properly started. For all these reasons, the GPC and partners like yourselves must work together to prioritize the education of stakeholders and the harmonization of rules and regulations that complicate the pursuit of plant-based innovation. In this way, we can minimize the barriers to trade that result from varying regulatory requirements from country to country, and as a result, facilitate innovation and trade throughout the world. If we can come together and build clear, democratic standards around gene editing in pulses, we can truly revolutionize our food systems for the benefit of all. I'm convinced that with this innovation on their side, there is nothing that can stop pulses becoming a widespread source of affordable, nutritious, sustainable protein capable of providing food security across the globe. This is why at the GPC, we prize our partnerships with national associations and the research community. These groups are the backbone to driving sustainable progress in the pulses industry. Now more than ever, it's vital for us to come together across the globe, regardless of the country. For for us to put aside our differences to create lasting impact when it comes to feeding the world and feeding it well. We must nurture our international partnerships and bring the innovative work of researchers such as yourselves to the forefront of the global conversation. We look forward to working with all of you and being part of this exciting moment in our industry. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Cindy for her presentation. It's important to hear from the pulse industry perspective on science and research. And this is one thing that's been absolutely wonderful in engaging the LINC team, is to hear where they're thinking forward, what their thoughts are of the future of legumes nationally and globally. As Ms. Brown notes, gene editing research is one innovation which can assist in obtaining global food security goals. Although this technology is outside the current scope of the Legume System Innovation Lab, it's important to understand its role in our world food systems. Thanks again, Cindy, and researchers, please take note of the Global Pulse Confederation's offer of free membership. I encourage all of you to take advantage of this incredible opportunity. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. John Medendorf, the Deputy Director of the Legume Systems Innovation Lab, who will moderate today's research session. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry, and greetings, everyone. As Barry mentioned, my name is John Medendorf. I am the Deputy Director of the Legume Systems Innovation Lab, and I want to welcome you to our Day 1 research session. Before we begin our research session today, I'd like to take a minute to mention the cross-cutting themes that each one of our projects is implementing. For those of you who work with USAID frequently, you understand that cross-cutting themes are critical to project implementation. And to assist each project in addressing the 5 cross-cutting themes of gender, youth, nutrition, human and institutional capacity development, and resilience, the Legume Systems Innovation Lab has created what we call the Resilience Resource Team, or RRT. This group of expert advisors provides cross-cutting activity support to lab projects through a series of competitive supplemental grants managed by the management entity. Today and tomorrow, we will share a number of short videos highlighting the work of our projects through these supplemental grants awarded to date. We will take a few moments now to view a short video on the Legume Lab's gender efforts. Today, we will hear from 5 of our research projects. Included along with the research project updates will also be feature presentations by students supported through the lab. As Barry mentioned in his opening remarks, training the next generation of Legume researchers is a critical component of the Legume Lab. We are excited to have these students showcase their work with you today. The format of the research session will be a pre-recorded presentation by the project team, along with any student presentations related to the presenting project. These pre-recorded presentations will be followed by a live, short question and answer period. To submit a question, please use the question and answer feature in the Wova platform, not the chat feature in Zoom, on the right panel of your Wova convening page during the presentation. Since our question and answer time is very limited, we ask that all participants monitor the question and answer and vote up questions that are of the most interest to you by clicking on the thumbs up icon next to the individual questions. In the live question and answer session at the end of each presentation, we will be selecting the questions with the most upvotes for further elaboration. Also, to help us in managing your questions, please preface your question with a numeric designation for the presentation. 5 projects will be presented today. I will provide the corresponding numeric designation before each presentation. Please list the corresponding numeric designation at the beginning of your question. In other words, put the number at the beginning of your question. Our first presentation is science-driven and farmer-oriented insect pest management for the cowpea agro ecosystems in West Africa. This project is going to be led by, is led by Dr. Manuel Tamu, International Institute of Tropical Agriculture in Benin. Presenting today is Dr. Manuel Tamu. The question and answer designation for this project is the number 1. That is the number 1.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to present you some updates of our project, Science-Driven and Farmer-Oriented Insect Pest Management for Cowpea Agro Ecosystems in West Africa. Our project is operating in several countries. Let's start with Burkina Faso, around Kambwanse and also Bobo Dioulasso and Bamfora. And here our main collaborators are Evelyn Compaoré and Fousseni Traoré. Evelyn is a gender specialist, Fousseni is an entomologist. They are both based at INERA. In Niger, we work in the region of Maradi, and here our main collaborators are Amadou Lawale of INRAN and Professor Ibrahim Bawa of the University of Maradi. In Nigeria, we work mainly in the region of Ilorin right now, but we will also be moving to the region of south of Kano, as you will see. And here our collaborator is James Ojo of the University of the Kwara State University. In the US, we work with David Mota-Sanchez of MSU and Julia Bello Bravo at Purdue. And then finally in Benin, we work with our new postdoc on a German fellowship, Hilaire Pongbe, and then Benjamin Datino and myself at IATA. So this year, I would like to focus on some aspects of our work which I couldn't present in details last year. I will start with biocontrol agents though. Just a quick update from Nigeria, for instance, where we had successful releases of parasitoids, both the Liragatis javanus and Phanerotomus lepte. In Kwara State, you can see the details from the table. What is important to note here is this plant. So these are the flowers of Phaneroptera cyanescens. It's a widespread shrub in these latitudes. It's called the Yoruba indigo and is a host plant for both Maruca vitrata and the parasitoids. So it is important that we focus on these plants during the dry season as well. Then we also have carried out biocontrol sensitization campaigns in all 3 countries, but it is quite challenging actually to capture the exact number of participants. Sometimes we invite authorities, farmers, and so on. So people come and go, so it's difficult really to take statistics of those people participating. Now let's move to chemical ecology. This I couldn't present last year. In fact, we just installed now our new equipment at IATA. So this is Hilaire proudly showing his new toys. So state-of-the-art GCMS. But the real chemical ecology work is in the field. It's the dirt work in the field. And so Hilaire went to see the gems at Kwasu, and they were both investigating the host finding behavior of the parasitoid, basically by collecting volatiles from infested and uninfested flowering structures of cowpea. So, and this is translated now into chromatograms from the GCMS. So you can see differences between the uninfested flowers and the infested flowers. It's quite exciting to see some structures which still need to be elucidated, particularly in the infested flowers. And we are excited that this will give us some clues about the host finding behavior of the parasitoid. Chemical ecology has also been an important tool in the past, looking at aggregation pheromones of Clavigralla tomentosicollis. And so these are a bit old data from Hilaire. What is important here is that those aggregation pheromones were able to attract the egg parasitoid of the podbug, and this is really what we wanted. But we were astonished to see that those pheromones are also attracting maruca moths, and quite a substantial number actually here, about 20% depending on the locations and the compounds. So, and more recently, we were actually able to capture also the parasitoids. So this gives us a new tool, first for monitoring populations, but also to think about lure and kill devices for the moth, and recruitment devices for the parasitoids to invite them, let's put it like this, earlier in the field and be able to attack early stages of the caterpillar. So let's switch gear now and move to Niger, where we finally started our socioeconomic study on characterizing farm households and also assessing the adoption of agroecological practices. So this socio-economic survey was carried out by our PhD student, a lady, and she looked at close to 700 farm households. I'm not going to report all the details of the statistics, but what is worth noting is that some 20% of the households were managed by women, also the farms actually. The household size for Niger is probably one of the highest in West Africa. They have a high natality rate, and so it's over 10 individuals. And then look at the yields in cowpea. Although the areas are quite big, but the yields are still very low. So. And then, of course, the student is looking into this data a little bit more in details and trying to find factors and determinants. So here is just preliminary work that she has started to cluster those data according to yield and the factors influencing yield. So we will hear more about this in the course of the year. So last year I presented details of how to produce and utilize the neem tea bag. And this year I want to focus a little bit more on ways of scaling this information to a large number of users. So this will be done using animation video provided by Scientific Animations Without Borders, SABO, and collaborators. So we really want to use this technology, which has proven to be very, very efficient. I'm not going to present you the video because it's not ready yet, but just to show you some of the stunning pictures that are snapshots actually of the video. So these are the neem seeds, then they are collected and pounded, ground. They are winnowed, and then we produce the neem seed powder, if possible using the game changers that I presented last year. So these small motorized mills. Then we present details of how to sew the bag, how to fill it with the ground neem seeds, and then to package them and to sell them for money. Then the neem tea bags are soaked overnight in water and sprayed the next day with a normal sprayer. And then the sale of the neem tea bags, of course, is bringing extra income to households, and which can be used, for instance, for education of the kids. Then I'm also going to report on cross-cutting activities. The cross-cutting activity in Burkina is not started yet, but is going to start soon. The one in Niger, preparing, expanding the use of the FIA for pod sucking bugs. So here we have made some progress on the scouting animation, how to show farmers how to scout in very simple forms. So we have here like, you know, how to take the GPS coordinates and then start this scouting. So here, you know, you will have prompts on the screen. But what is new this time is that we also have voice commands, and you will see that in the next video. So you still have the possibility of using the old way of pushing buttons. So what is important, that when the scouting starts, you will be asked to choose plants, and then you will be asked to look at the pods of the plants. If the pods are healthy, they will be reported as healthy, and you have a button to click on that. And then if the pods have pod sucking bugs or display attack symptoms, then you have to report them as attacked. And if you see the adults of the pod sucking bug, you report them also here. So then you repeat this scouting basically for 10 stations. That's a total of 60 plants. And when you finish the scouting, then the app calculates the infestation threshold. If the infestation threshold is attained, then it will ask you to treat. So like in this case, you will have an alert, and then it will ask you to, for instance, spray with the neem tea bag or with another biopesticide or with a chemical pesticide, depending what is available in the region. So the next video is about the voice commands, and I hope it will show it. You can listen to those voice commands. It's of course in French for the moment. It's meant to be used in Niger for ground truthing next. I mean this coming year, yes.
Bonjour, nous allons démarrer le dépistage. Tu dois d'abord
this is the
identifier les
start
caches
of the
de ton
scouting.
champ. Ensuite, déplace-toi vers le premier piquet. Une fois sur place, il faut dire OK.
OK.
Il faut traverser le champ pour aller sur le deuxième piquet. Une fois sur place, il faut dire OK.
The voice commands actually are not the main challenging thing. The main challenging thing is really the
Maintenant,
understanding of the
les
prompts.
ciblants autour de toi correspondant aux 6 cercles qui s'affichent sur l'écran. Inspecte le premier plan et répondre oui si tu observes des gosses et non si tu n'observes pas de gosses.
Oui.
Il faut répondre 0 si c'est une gosse saine ou 2 si c'est une gosse attaquée.
0.
So we went a bit farther. We have already started testing the app with one of our field workers, and just to see if the commands are understandable and if the voice prompts are also okay. And so far looks quite good. So we are very happy that it works. Now, of course, the next step is really to bring the app to Niger during the season and to do wide ground validation with Lawali and his team. So finally, I was also asked to present some of our scaling plans. So for biocontrol agents, we want to intensify releases south of Kano, as I mentioned in the introductions. And this will happen around this area here. This is Kano. And this is a big irrigation scheme, the Kadava irrigation area, about 500 square meters. This is a place where there is a lot of alternative host plants. And Maruka is passing the dry season, ready to invade the cowpea fields from this region, and which has very serious implication for the whole northern region. So if we can make impact here with the parasitoids, then I think we will have gone a long way in fighting Maruka pod borer. In terms of biopesticides, I already showed you the Sabo video animation, so that will be our scaling enabler for the NIMT bag. In Burkina Faso, we are thinking of installing the NIMT bag production units, and Fuseni and colleagues have already made some progress in that. We are also thinking of, actually we are doing, leveraging scaling funds for Niger and Burkina through a GIZ project. The proposal is being finalized for submission. And also very important that we had discussions with the regulatory authorities of SILS, basically to register the biopesticides. Right now we have a temporary admission to use the biopesticide, but we want to anchor them in a proper ECOWAS legislation for future use and also commercialization. So, and for the FIA, right now we are very happy, but we have to think of scaling the FIA beyond the project lifespan, and this is only possible through the involvement of private sector, or this case is a startup enterprise, Zoko, based in Ghana. They have wide experience already scaling out climate advisories for farmers. So at this point, I would like to acknowledge USAID through the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Legume System Research at MSU for sponsoring our project, and of course, the whole team on the ground for their collaboration, for their for keeping with these hard times of COVID. And I would like to thank all of you for attending this meeting. Thank you very much and have a nice day.
Thank you very much, Dr. Manutamo, for that very enlightening and interesting presentation. I would like to invite Dr. Tamo to join me now for the question and answer session. Dr. Tamo, the first question on the list here is, in the socioeconomic survey that you conducted, it was mentioned that more than 50% of the household farmers interviewed were literate. Can you please share how literacy rate was measured? Were there specific factors that you looked at? Was it self-reporting? How did you determine the literacy level of the farmers? You are on mute, Tamu.
Sorry. All right, now we have it. Yeah, so good morning, good afternoon, everyone. All right, so this survey basically carried out by our students was asking very simple questions. Is the like, you know, very typical questions about literacy. Did you attend primary school? This is in Niger, so we also ask questions about attending Quranic school, for instance, and then, you know, up the ladder, secondary school, college, until university, and even some technical schools. So this is the way the questions were asked, and basically literacy is really starting from primary school, because if kids don't go to school at all, then that will be a problem. But in our view, for this kind of surveys, as soon as you enter the primary school or the Quranic school, you get some form of literacy, which can be useful, particularly in a farming, in the context of farming households.
Thank you, very helpful. So the next question is, how expensive is the biopesticide?
Yeah, so how expensive to produce it? I mean, neem seeds are for free. So what is expensive is the time of those who are collecting it, processing it. And then if you have to use a motorized mill to grind it, of course, that is an investment. And that investment, we had, of course, some of these motorized mills be purchased under the initial phase of the Feed the Future Legume Innovation Lab. But we are trying to see how the community-based organizations can really get together and put together some funds to buy those motorized mills. The sale price is, it depends a little bit on the head of the purchaser. So for instance, for farmers, we sell the tea bag for less than $1, just to say 400, 500 CFA. But if you have an NGO wanting to buy, you know, some volume of the tea bags, the price can go basically up to $2, yeah, 1,000 CFA.
Okay. And what does that represent for a farmer? Is that a lot of their income, or is it a little of their income?
Well, this is again, it's context specific, you know. Now, if you are a farmer and you want to buy the pesticide, the biopesticide, and it costs you 400 CFA, you know, what are the options? The options is not spraying at all, and then you would probably lose your harvest. Or the other option is to buy chemical pesticides, which might be or not be available, but even if they are available, they are not cheap. If you go for recommended pesticides, they are definitely more expensive than the neem tea bag in their application. Of course, you can argue that chemical pesticides are much more efficient at a certain point, at least. But again, I would say we haven't done a proper economic evaluation of this. It's in the pipeline, but just from my gut feeling, I can say if community-based, women-led communities are producing these tea bags, is because they have found out they can make money out of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then maybe just briefly, what is the biggest challenge in the development of a mobile application? What was your biggest challenge?
In the development of the FIA, you mean, huh?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the biggest challenge was the beginning, how to get things organized, and particularly the scouting protocol that was not evident at all because there was basically no big model, at least in our latitudes, than what could rely on. So we had to start a little bit from scratch, and because the random points are, we wanted to be statistically correct and have a proper algorithm to guide those sampling points. Of course, and then the second biggest challenge was the voice commands, because that's not a completely finished story. So it works well, but it can definitely be improved. And then we will see when we basically do the crash test in the field in a couple of months.
Well, thank you, Dr. Tomo, for that very interesting and enlightening presentation, and thank you for answering our questions. It is now time for the break. We will take a brief 10-minute break. Our program will continue promptly at 11:30, and I'm sure that you're not going to want to miss a single word. So we'll go to break now, and we'll see you in 10 minutes. Excuse me. Our next presentation is Optimized Shrub System, Improving Cowpea Yields and Strengthening Smallholder Resilience. This project is ongoing and is led by Dr. Richard Dick of Ohio State University. Presenting today are Dr. Richard Dick and Dr. Musa Diangar from the project team. Immediately following their presentation will be a presentation given by Nafissatou Diallo. Nafi is a student under Dr. Richard Dick's project. She is a master's degree student at the University of Thiès in Senegal. The question and answer designation for Dr. Richard Dick's presentation is the number 2. And for Nafissatou's presentation, it is the alphanumeric 2A. That is 2A. Also, please note that Ms. Diallo's presentation is recorded in French. We will take a slight pause between presentations so our English speakers can ensure that they have selected the English language channel in Zoom, or the French language channel, the English language channel in Zoom. This can be done by clicking on the globe icon on the bottom right-hand side of your Zoom page. Over to you.
I'd like to thank the organizers for this opportunity to speak about our project in Senegal with the Legume Lab and USAID. We appreciate very much the opportunity to be here today. So we're going to talk about our longstanding research program that we've had looking at optimized shrub intercropping systems for, and specifically to look at improving cowpea productivity. Next slide. So as I'm sure just everybody is quite aware, there are major challenges in the Sahel. There's a very historically sandy soils, low fertility, and then combined with increasing populations and agricultural productivity, overgrazing and so forth, and creates a challenge for managing these soils for long-term productivity. And most of the farmers are subsistence farmers. The Green Revolution technologies with fertilizers and inputs and so forth have really not been used very much in this region. Next slide. the challenge is that in this part of the world, the population is growing exponentially, as shown in the top line here, and whereas the yields since the 1960s, which is shown in the blue triangles, has really pretty much stayed the same. This is millet, but it's pretty much the case for all the crops in the region. And yet the land and the way people have been feeding themselves is by increasing the land under production, which is shown by the orange oval dots, symbols. So, and that is plateauing. So it reached a point where population goes up, the amount of land available, arable land is not, it is not opportunity to increase anymore. So we have to make up this difference by increasing the yields. Next slide. And so we've been working on a potential solution to this for over 20 years now, largely in the research realm, but now moving into working with farmers. But it is a biological and local solution using native shrubs to really work at remediating these degraded soils. And to remediate these soils, a major factor is the amount of biomass that goes in the soil. So if you look around what's typically available, manure, or what comes off of trees, because there are some trees that potentially are planted in farmers' fields or that are coexist there, but the amount of biomass produced by these are on a village area basis are too low. So whereas we've discovered that these two native shrubs, Garrus senegalensis and Pelistigum reticulatum, which are found in farmers' fields throughout the Sahel, can produce quite high amounts of biomass in what we call in our optimized system, which we'll talk more about in a minute. Next slide. So the traditional management system, this is what's shown in Senegal, but pretty much typical perhaps throughout the Sahel, is that the few shrubs that are in farmers' fields, which are typically 200 to 300, 350 at the most, are copiced, put in piles, and then burned. And then unfortunately, this is a loss of organic matter that could be going in soils. And it's part of the reason why these soils become so degraded. Next slide. So the optimized system involves increasing anywhere from 200 to 300 plus shrubs per hectare. That's currently in farmers' fields up to as high as 1,500, 1,200 to 1,500 shrubs per hectare. And instead of burning the residue, all of this residue is put back in the soil. And as you can see here, we can get a fair amount of biomass from this system with these higher density shrub management stands. Upwards of 3 megagrams per hectare per year can be produced. And this is a picture of 2016 on our long-term plots showing the response of millet to the plus and minus shrub cropping after about roughly 8 years of this system being in place. Next slide. So the optimized system basically still involves copicing, but instead of burning, the residue is put in the soil. And then the second thing is to actually plant shrubs in farmers' fields. And this is one of our collaborating farmers currently in our USAID on-farm testing program. She's planting Garrus senegalensis. Next slide. So the really important results we've had after all these years of research, which is roughly going on 31 peer-reviewed journal articles now, we increased the soil quality to remediate soils. There's a dramatic increase in organic matter. At least 2 times as much organic matter as when we started is now permanently being held in the soil. Another really interesting thing is that we've discovered that these shrubs bioirrigate. These roots go very deep. These shrubs have the roots that go very deep right to the top of the water table. So we measure them down at 10 meters, 30 or 40 feet, and they're able to actually bring up water at night when the photosynthesis stops, and they leak out water into the surrounding soil. And we've shown that this actually can get crops through in-season drought periods. And other benefits are increased nutrient and water efficiency. We've shown that we increase the microbial diversity by the presence of shrubs, and particularly some beneficial microorganisms. They sequester a lot of carbon. And another really important finding is that these shrubs decrease the time to harvest for the crops we've studied most intensely up until this point, which is millet and peanut. on the order of 15 days. So this is an important property for a semi-arid environment because of the uncertainty of the rains. And so if you can get your crop in and out of the field quicker, you reduce the chances of being having a negative effect due to a poor rain season or in-season drought. Next slide. So what we're going to talk about, our particular legume project has these 4 objectives. We're going to talk mainly about objective 2 this year for time purposes. And next year we'll be talking about objective 1 and some of the other, and 1, 3, and 4 for that matter. So today we're going to specifically talk about screening cowpea varieties, looking for those that would be better adapted for this optimized shrub intercropping system. So with that, I'll turn it over to Musa, who's been heading up this research in Senegal.
Thank you, Richard. In 2020 and 2021, we carried a trial where we had 8 varieties involved and 2 management systems. One was an optimized management system with shrubs, and shrubs were Piliostigma reticulatum and Gera senegalensis, and the traditional management system was the usual plot of the farmer where you have no inputs. So basically this trial was carried out to see if using the shrub can increase the yield of cowpea. And the cowpea that we have was 5 varieties that have larger seed size, and namely Sam, Kel, Leona, Lissar, and then we had also Yasin, Bombay 21, and Murid as varieties that were released earlier. And next slide. So this is just to remind about the result that we had recorded in 2020. In this plot, you can see the OSS plus is the system that is optimized where we have the involvement of the shrub, and OSS minus is the plots where you don't have nothing. So the plots where we have a representation of the true condition of the farmer, which is growing cowpea without any inputs. And then you can see Piliostigma reticulatum is in Nyoro, is a wet area, and Gera senegalensis is located in Chess, and this is a dry area. But when you look at these plots, the box plot, you can notice a difference, a huge difference, especially in the Piliostigma reticulatum, where you have greater performances in plots that involved the presence of Piliostigma reticulatum. Next slide, we have pretty much the same trend in 2020, but we learned a lot from our experience in 2020, because that was the first time we conducted this kind of trial, and we took that experience and then implemented it in 2021 so that we have greater results. And we are pretty much happy about the results, because look at these figures. You see the management systems involving the shrubs, and the yield is always higher than the typical traditional management system. And this is almost like 400% greater in plots where you have involved the shrubs. In plots where you have nothing, the yield was very, very, very low. And when you look at these data, they are, because the potential yield of our varieties range from 1 ton per hectare to 3.5 ton per hectare. So that means that the farmer can pretty much reach the yield that we can have in a managed trial in research institute. And that is great. That means better resilience of the farmer. Next slide. Yeah, now in terms of best performing varieties, so as I was saying, we had 8 varieties that was tested under shrub and under minus shrubs. And then what you can see here is Yasin was the best performing variety under Piliostigma reticulatum, and the second best was Kelp. And you see also Leona, the best one under Gera senegalensis, and Yasin was the second best one. But then you notice the yield was always greater than 3 ton per hectare, and in the plots that involved the shrubs. But in the plots where you did not have shrubs, it was very difficult to barely reach 500 kilogram per hectare. And 500 kilogram per hectare is a reference figure that is the mean in sub-Saharan Africa in terms of grain yield. So you can reach, you can exceed 500 kilogram per hectare. Is like very, very difficult to exceed this figure. So if we can have a technology in the optimized management system that can dramatically increase yield at the point where you have the yield that you would have had in research institute. So that is, I mean, a great improvement of the resilience of farmers. Next slide. So in terms of effect of the management system, we have noticed that yield, grain yield, biomass, fresh biomass yield, dry biomass yield, and 100 seed weight was very sensitive to the management system, meaning that we had a significant effect of the management system. But for other parameters such as plant stand, plant height, and stem diameters, they did not change according to the management system. Next slide. This is a picture we took in 2020 just to show the contrast that you can have between traditional management system represented by here minus OSS and optimized management system represented here by plus OSS. So you can see the difference in terms of the fresh biomass and plots where we had the shrubs, the presence of shrubs. Plant tended to develop at least 3 times better than plots where we did not have the shrub. And last year, as I was saying, it was a trial that was very difficult to manage, and we couldn't at this period get the grain yield because there was some other parameters that we did not take into account, such as the presence of insects, and then we couldn't have data on the yield. And we factored that information into the trial of 2021. Unfortunately, we don't have pictures to show you in 2021, but looking at the figures, you just notice dramatically how different the difference was. Next slide. What we can learn from this experiment is we can significantly improve the resilience of farmers by using this technology. And what is about is having the shrub, as they naturally grow in farmers' field, instead of burning them or eliminating them completely to the field, take advantage of their presence by using the biomass to incorporate it as a fertilizer into the soil and then also having the plants in the plots that will play that role of bioirrigation as it uses its root system to bring up the water that would have been difficult to access, to be accessible for the plant. And the cowpea cultivars perform differently under Piliostigma reticulatum and Guerra senegalensis, that what we have seen also in this experiment. And also, this appear to be an approach that can really attain genotype yield potential. So, another picture that you can see here, Guerra senegalensis and Piliostigma reticulatum. So how the cowpea perform. Yeah. These are the information that we wanted to share, and thank you very much.
Bonjour à tous, j'ai l'honneur et le plaisir de partager avec vous les résultats de mon étude qui portait essentiellement sur la réponse des variétés de niébé à la fertilisation par incorporation de la biomasse d'arbustes de Guerra senegalensis et de Piliostigma reticulatum. Next. En effet, le niébé est une culture de base largement cultivée et consommée en Afrique et joue un rôle important dans l'équilibre nutritionnel des populations rurales, en particulier les femmes et les enfants. Cependant, il existe un écart substantiel entre le potentiel de rendement qui est estimé à 3500 kg par hectare et le potentiel réel qui est de 300 kg par hectare. Des études au Sénégal, les contraintes majeures qui affectent la productivité du niébé sont entre autres la sécheresse et la dégradation des sols. Des études ont montré que l'utilisation de Guerra senegalensis et de Piliostigma reticulatum, que l'association de Guerra senegalensis et de Piliostigma reticulatum avec d'autres plantes améliore non seulement la qualité du sol, mais aussi permet à l'eau du sol de remonter vers la plante tout en apportant des minéraux essentiels à son développement, ce qui favorise le développement, l'augmentation des rendements. Piliostigma reticulatum et Guerra senegalensis ont longtemps été associés à des céréales, ce qui n'est pas le cas des légumineuses telles que le niébé. Next. L'objet de notre étude est donc d'étudier l'effet de l'incorporation de la biomasse de Guerra senegalensis et de Piliostigma reticulatum sur le rendement du niébé. De façon spécifique, il s'agissait de déterminer la réponse variétale du niébé à la fertilisation de Piliostigma reticulatum et de Guerra senegalensis, mais aussi d'identifier les meilleures performances. Next. L'étude a été menée dans 2 sites de recherche à long terme, à savoir Nioro dans le village de Kendari et à Thiès dans le village de Kermata Aram. Sur chaque site, un dispositif à factoriel bloc a été mis en place, et dont 2 facteurs, 8 génotypes et 2 systèmes de gestion, à savoir le système de culture optimisé et le système traditionnel. Les différents génotypes utilisés sont Sam, Yacine, Kel, Bambay 21, Léona, Lizard, Mourid et Chain. Pour le système de culture optimisé, l'opération consistait à incorporer la biomasse taillée dans le sol et à le labourer. Comme facteur étudié, nous avons le rendement, le poids de 100 grammes, le poids de la biomasse fraîche, le poids de la biomasse sèche, la densité, la hauteur des plants et le diamètre. Next. Notre expérience nous a permis d'avoir des résultats et de les établir sous forme de tableau. Le premier tableau nous montre l'effet du système de gestion sur le rendement des différents génotypes. Pour le traitement avec Guerra senegalensis, on constate que le rendement est plus élevé avec ce traitement que de traitement sans Guéra, voire 37 fois plus grande. Et le rendement avec Guéra sénégalensis est largement supérieur que le rendement sans le traitement Guéra sénégalensis, voire 4 fois plus élevé. Le rendement avec Guéra sénégalensis est également plus élevé que le rendement avec Plostiquema reticulatum est largement supérieur que le rendement avec Guéra sénégalensis, voire 2 fois plus élevé. Le tableau 3 nous montre l'ordre de classement des variétés de niébé sur le rendement. On constate que pour le traitement avec Guéra sénégalensis, Yacine occupe la première place. Next. Et elle est suivie de Kel, qui occupe la deuxième place. Pour le traitement avec Guéra sénégalensis, c'est la variété Léona qui occupe la première place, suivie de la variété Yacine. Pour le traitement sans Plostiquema reticulatum, la variété Léona également occupe le premier rang, suivi de la variété Kel. Pour le traitement sans Guéra sénégalensis, c'est la variété Kel qui occupe le premier rang, suivi de la variété Yacine. Le tableau 4 nous montre les variétés à haut rendement et les variétés à faible rendement pour chaque type de traitement. On constate que pour ces 3 tableaux, on constate que le rendement produit par le système de culture optimisé atteint ou dépasse le rendement potentiel et que Yacine a le rendement le plus élevé avec Plostiquema reticulatum et le deuxième le plus élevé avec Guéra sénégalensis. Cependant, Léona avec Guéra sénégalensis a le rendement le plus élevé, soit 4000 kg par hectare à Thiès où le sol était plus sec et moins fertile. Next. Le tableau 5. Next, Amanda. Le tableau 5 nous montre, le tableau 4 nous montre la comparaison. Non. Nous montre la comparaison des caractéristiques des variétés à haut rendement. Ces variétés sont Yacine, Kel et Léona. Nous constatons que ces variétés ont pratiquement les mêmes caractéristiques, sauf pour la variété Yacine qui présente des graines à couleur marron. C'est bon. Yes. Non. Ok, c'est bon. Next. C'est bon. Ces variétés à haut rendement sont enregistrées à Nioro où la pluviométrie a été très abondante en 2021. Le tableau 5 nous montre la comparaison des caractéristiques des variétés à faible rendement. Ces variétés sont Bambé 21, Samché et Lizard. On constate que ces variétés à faible rendement sont enregistrées à Thiès où le sol a été moins fertile et où la pluviométrie a été moins abondante. Next. En conclusion, nous pouvons dire que le traitement avec Plostiquema reticulatum a surpassé le traitement sans Plostiquema reticulatum de 97%. Et le traitement avec Guéra sénégalensis a également surpassé le traitement sans Guéra sénégalensis de 77%. Les résultats nous ont également montré que le système de culture optimisé a augmenté le rendement du niébé de 442% par rapport au système de culture traditionnel dans des conditions de sécheresse produites en 2021. En particulier à Thiès, où la sécheresse devient de plus en plus fréquente et devrait augmenter au cours de la prochaine décennie. Merci pour votre attention.
Thank you, Dr. Richard Dick and Dr. Musa Dianga, and also the student Nafisatu Diallo for that really interesting presentation. Those are really astonishing results. And not only am I encouraged by the results that we saw in your presentation, but also at how poised that young scientist was. If our next generation are like she, then I think we are in very good hands for the future. We would like to invite Dr. Dick and Dr. Diangra to join us now for the question and answer session. If you could turn on your cameras and mics. And we have a couple of questions here that we would like to address to you. The first one is, very impressive yields. What do you think is the major contributing factor to the greater grain yields, water or SOM? Over to you, Richard.
Yeah, it's hard to really say. Now, the data for 2021, as Nafi mentioned, was that it was a drought year. So probably a major factor was the drought, is the water, the hydraulic lift that was going on. But the other thing is you just have higher quality soils. So, and it's very clear from other research and our own research that you have to have repeated inputs of organic matter in these sandy, sort of low fertility soils. So, and that does a number of things. It increases water efficiency, nutrient efficiency, and then it's also a source of nutrients. Yeah, it's a little hard to say because you can't really differentiate under field conditions whether it's the water relations or the nutrient relations or the overall better quality of the soil.
Mm-hmm. Understood. And then the next question is, what kind of management did you apply beyond shrubs and non-shrubs? In other words, what other management practices were applied to the crops?
In this particular study, there was nothing. There was no fertilizers, no manure, nothing. Nothing was there were no additional inputs, and I think Musa, there was no pesticides, right? You're muted.
No pesticide. So the thing was to have a simulation of the environment of the farmer. So no input, just cultivating the copy. That was the instance we call traditional management system. And the optimized management system were the association of copy with the shrubs, and also putting the biomass under the soil as a fertilization. So there was no additional management.
Mm-hmm. I would just say that in our other research, we looked at fertilizer, just the standard recommended NPK recommended fertilizer inputs, and we ran those from 0 up to 1.5, the recommended rates for both millet and peanut. We don't have it for cowpea, but we clearly show that if you add fertilizer, you get an even bigger response, especially on millet. Not so much on peanut, but definitely on millet, you see a definite response that adding fertilizer gives you an additional yield response. But probably for cowpea, that may not be so important, although maybe phosphorus or some of these other nutrients might still be limiting. But given the high yields that we're reaching theoretical potential, suggests that there's probably enough nutrients in there, at least for cowpea.
Mm-hmm. One more quick question. Would you care to speculate on why P. reticulatum was doing better than G. senegalensis?
Well, the problem there is that you have two things happening there. You're in the south where it's wetter, and you have a higher quality soil, higher clay soil. Mm-hmm. So you can't really separate out the effects of the shrub with the soil type. And so you have a combination of a little more rainfall and a better soil in where Pileostigma is. So that's so you can't really separate that out. But I would say in general, on other crops, we actually find that there's on a relative basis, there's a bigger response at Garrett senegalensis in the north than there is in the south. But it was a little different with cowpea here.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, we're going to have to end our question and answer session there. I just want to note that Fastu was not able to be available for the live question and answer, but if you have questions for her, you can put those in the question and answer panel, and those will be answered in writing. And also, there's a couple of other really interesting questions here, Richard and Musa. So if you care to jump on the question and answer panel and answer some of these questions, I'm sure that those who asked them would be very grateful for your responses.
Right.
So that concludes our question and answer session. Thank you, Dr. Dick and Dr. Diangar. Before our next research presentation, the RRT presents a short video on Legume Lab's nutrition efforts. And welcome back once again. That gives you a brief overview of some of the nutrition work that we are conducting through the cross-cutting grants. Our third research project presentation is sustainable intensification of dual-purpose cowpea varieties for enhanced food and fodder in Senegal. This project is ongoing and is led by Dr. Augustine Aubour, Kansas State University. Presenting today is Dr. Aubour. The question and answer designation for this project is the number 3.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us for the Legume Systems Innovation Lab Global Convening. My name is Augustine Aubour. Today, I would like to share with you some of the work that we're doing in Senegal, looking at sustainable intensification of dual-purpose cowpea varieties for enhanced food and fodder in Senegal. This is a research collaboration between Kansas State University and ISRA in Senegal. Here at K-State, the co-PIs on this project include myself, Dr. Vera Prasad, and Dr. Don Min. In Senegal, the work is being led by Dr. Ali Fayel at ISRA. The focus area for this study is the Senegalese peanut basin. We are looking at 3 different environments with different precipitation gradients. We are looking at the Loga region, the Diobel, and the Kafri region. This is in close proximity to the Feed the Future zone of influence. These three locations also houses major production of cowpea in Senegal. And we also have ISRA facilities close by in this region. Cowpea is an important legume crop, well adapted to the semi-arid regions of West Africa. Unfortunately, yields are very low, ranging about 400 kilograms per hectare. Over the years, there have been a lot of efforts looking at breeding for dual purpose cowpea varieties. These dual purpose cowpea varieties have greater forage yield and grain yield. They stay green at maturity, and with that, it increases the forage quality and also increases forage availability, which is very important for these cropping systems where we have both livestock and crops being kept on the same farm. The overall goal of this project is to look at how we can sustainably intensify agro-pastoral systems and increase adoption of high-yielding dual-purpose cowpea. And we're also looking at developing agronomic management practices that will support the adoption of these cowpea varieties. We have two main objectives. The first one is to evaluate dual-purpose benefits of cowpea varieties to increase both forage and fodder quality and quantity. We are also looking at conducting a trade-off assessment for cowpea markets with particular focus on trade-offs and synergies between grain and forage production in areas that are traditional pastoralists compared to areas that traditionally grow cowpeas. In terms of metrics, we are using the mother-baby trial. We have genotype by environment by management studies, and then we also have cowpea variety studies that are being conducted at 3 locations in Senegal. We are looking at Bambey, Bolé, and Daramoussi. The genotype by environment by management trials have a split plot arrangement of treatments. We have the main plots are 2 cropping systems, intercropping of cowpea and millet, and monocropping of cowpea or millet. Then we have 10 cowpea varieties, which includes 5 new released varieties of Leona, Chain, Kaylee, Lizard, and Sam. And we also looking at older varieties. And we also looking at 5 fertilizer treatments, which includes no fertilizer, 30 kilogram phosphorus per hectare apply alone, or 30 kilogram phosphorus, nitrogen, and potassium. We also looking at 15-15 NPK, and then the final treatment is 2.5 tons per hectare manure in combination with 30 kilograms NPK. The cowpea variety trials are also being done at the 3 locations. We have 5 new cowpea varieties. We have 2 older varieties, Yasin and Malik. Then we have 6 dual-purpose varieties that has been released some time ago. Then we have 7 dual-purpose or forage type varieties that we got from UC Riverside. Then we have 2 fertility levels that we are considering in the cowpea variety trials too. This is the field layout of the experiment plots in 2021. On my left is the field layout for the cowpea variety trials, and then on the right is the field layout of the genotype by environment by management studies. This is some of the data from the genotype by management by environment trials that were conducted in 2021. Here we are showing grain yields and fodder yields of cowpea varieties that are average across the 2 cropping systems and the fertilizer treatments. The purple bar is data from Boale, the light green bar is data from Bambey, and the dark green bar is the data from Daramoussi. As you can see from here, grain yields were significantly greater in Bambey than the 2 other locations. In 2021 and also in 2020, we're seeing consistent increases in grain and fodder yields from the dual-purpose cowpea varieties like Chain and Leona compared to Yasin. Also, forage yields were significantly greater for these dual-purpose cowpea varieties compared to the local variety Yasin. Here we are showing grain yields and forage yields from the 5 fertilizer treatments that were imposed on the cropping system study. This is average across the 2 cropping systems. Here also we have the purple bar is Berlin, the light green bar is data from Bombay, and the dark green bar is data from Daramusi. As you can see, both grain yields and fodder yield were significantly greater with our fertilizer treatments at Bombay and Berlin. And one thing that I want to point out here is even though we saw an increase in yields with fertilizer treatment, the highest yields were obtained where we applied 2 tons of manure per hectare in combination with 30 kilograms nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. This is very significant because in this environment, the soil organic matter levels are very low. So applying manure helped to actually increase the fertilizer use efficiency. When we apply phosphorus alone, we didn't see that much response compared to the control. I also like to point out that we didn't see any fertilizer response at Daramusi, either for grain yield or for fodder yield. And this is because of the very low soil organic matter content of the soils at this environment. This is data from total grain yield from comparing total grain yields for intercropping millet and cowpea or monocropping cowpea or millet. At both locations, Bombay, Bole, or Daramusi, we saw significant yield reduction when cowpea was planted intercropping with millet. However, when we combine the grain yields or fodder yields of cowpea and millet together, the total is significantly greater than the monocropping cowpea. Even in Daramusi, we saw about 200% increase in total yields for the intercropping versus the monocrop cowpea. So what this means is that we can grow these crops in an intercropping systems and still have very significant yields compared to when we grow it as a monocrop cowpea. This is data from the variety trials at Berlin. Here, the blue bar represent where we did not apply any fertilizer, and the orange bars are where we apply 15 kilogram nitrogen, 30 kilogram phosphorus, and 30 kilogram potassium. On the x-axis is our cowpea varieties. Here, as you can see, we saw a significant response to fertilizer application for each of the varieties, except Yasin. Forage yields also increase, significant increase with fertilizer application. We're seeing varieties like Leona, Kelly, and one of the varieties that we got from UC Riverside, EBC4, did very well in terms of grain production. In terms of forage production, we see one of the varieties from UC Riverside, 6635F, doing very, very well in terms of the total forage production. And it shows that this variety will actually be a forage type, not a dual purpose variety. Similarly to Boale, this is data from Bombay. We're still seeing a significant response to fertilizer application in terms of both grain yield and fodder yield. Here again, variety 6635 tends to produce significant biomass compared to all the other varieties. But grain yields are very, very low, showing that this variety is particularly good for fodder production, and it may be a forage type that can be grown compared to using it as a dual purpose variety. Once again, we saw an increase in grain and fodder yield for varieties like Leona, which is a dual purpose variety. In 2021, we also started the mother-baby trials. Here we are looking at performance of these dual-purpose varieties on producer fields. We are comparing 3 dual-purpose varieties with Yasin, and we also have 2 fertilizer levels. We randomly selected 25 producers to participate on these baby trials. These are from about 85 total farmers from each location. So each location, we have 25 farms where we are doing these baby trials. We help these farmers select the varieties, and we also help them, we train them on how to plant these dual purpose varieties in these experiments. Here is some data from the baby trials in Bombay. Here, the purple bar is no fertilizer, and the dark green bar is where we apply fertilizer at the recommended rate. The x-axis is our cowpea varieties. As you can see, both grain and fodder yields with Leona and Chain, which are dual-purpose variety, was significantly greater than Yasin. And we also saw a significant response to fertilizer application for both fodder and grain yield. This is data from Boale. Here again, we've seen a significant response to fertilizer application. Yasin produced significantly less grain and forage yields than Leona and Chain. This is data from Daramusi. Here too, we saw an increase in grain and forage yields with our dual-purpose varieties, Leona and Chain, compared to Yasin. Unfortunately, we did not see that much response to fertilizer application compared to the other two locations. And this is because the soils at Daramusi are highly depleted with very low soil organic matter content. But here we still saw an increase in yields with the dual-purpose cowpea varieties. One thing that we also did was to look at the adoption rate for these dual-purpose cowpea varieties across the three locations. What we saw was significant adoption of dual-purpose cowpea at Bombay, about 48%, compared to 20% in Daramusi and 32% in Kafrin. And this is possibly due to several factors. Notable among them is access to information and proximity to ISRA facilities. Bombay has an ISRA facility, and these farmers have access to information. We also saw that the uses of cowpea varieties determine the adoption of whether they are going to use these dual-purpose cowpea varieties or they will stick with the local varieties. This graph shows the use of cowpea varieties at each of these locations. In the Daramusi area, which is the Kabina area, most of these cowpea are sold to the market. It shows that possibly there's some preference for these older varieties because of the seed color or the taste to consumers. That is why they are now adopting the dual-purpose cowpea varieties. However, in Bombay, most of the cowpeas are used for animal feeding. And here, the adoption rate of dual-purpose is about 48% because biomass is very important when you are feeding these dual-purpose cowpea varieties. So that's why we're seeing high adoption of dual-purpose cowpea varieties in Bombay than the other locations. Human capacity building is a major component of this project. We are helping train graduate students in dryland cropping systems. We have one MA student in Senegal, Mr. Ndiaye, who is working on Masters in Agronomy. We also have another student enrolled in Agricultural Economics, Mr. Omar Douaf, who is looking at the socioeconomic aspects of this project. We also have one postdoctoral associate, Dr. Aplo, who is working with us on this project. We also have a lot of scientific exchanges of information on dryland cropping system research with scientists at ISRA. We also have women involvement in the baby trials where we are helping train them on management practices to improve production from these dual-purpose cowpea varieties. We have 6 undergraduate students helping with the baseline data collection. They are also all being trained on how to use these dual-purpose cowpea varieties and also agronomic management practices for improving yields from these dual-purpose cowpea varieties. The mother-baby trials helps in capacity building, especially for extension agents, and also directly training these producers. These are some pictures from some of the field trials this year. Here is a farmer looking at dual-purpose cowpea varieties, Leona, how it's performing compared to Yasin on his farm. We would like to thank USAID for funding this project and the Legume System Innovation Lab for supporting this research. Thank you very much for listening. I'll be very happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Dr. Obur, for that fascinating presentation. I invite you now to turn on your camera and your mic so that we can address some questions to you. There are a couple of questions here regarding the trials. First of all, one of the questioners wonders if comparing total weight of the grain is the best comparison. Have you done anything to measure, for example, total calories or protein or carb, the nutritional aspects of the bean as well?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think what we're doing here is just looking at the traditional way of looking at how we can estimate these land equivalent ratios. But I understand looking at total calories or total protein production will be a good way to another option to look at these. We are going to analyze the protein contents from this plots, and that will give us opportunity to look at that kind of estimation too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, in the future, it would be a good topic for a cross-cutting grant, I'm thinking, to look at the nutritional aspects of the cowpea. Another question is, what is the furthest distance of the baby trial from the mother trial? In other words, what kind of radius around the mother trial that you have? What was the greatest distance away?
Yeah, the goal is to look at farmers just close to each of the mother trial, just about within 5 to 10 kilometers away. But I don't know how far we have these producers from the exact distance now, but we have geospatial locations, but I don't really have the furthest distance. But the goal is to have them around the mother trial so they can observe what we're doing at the research locations compared to what is happening on their farms.
Mm-hmm. Understood. Well, that concludes our question and answer session for this presentation. Thank you, Dr. Obur. Our fourth research project presentation of the day is development of market-driven improved cowpea varieties using mature markers. This project is also ongoing and is led by Dr. Phil Roberts, University of California, Riverside. Presenting today will be Dr. Phil Roberts. Immediately following Dr. Roberts' presentation will be two student presentations. The first will be given by Ansa Samuel Owusu. Ansa is a master's student at Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Ghana, working toward completion of a degree in plant breeding. The second student presentation under Dr. Roberts' project will be given by Astu Tine. Astu is a student at Institut Supérieur de Formation Agricole et Rurale, ISPAR in Senegal. That's the Superior Institute of Agricultural and Rural Development. And he's working toward a degree in agricultural engineering. Also, please note that Ms. Tine's presentation is recorded in French. So a reminder to our English-speaking participants to ensure that you have selected English in the Zoom language channel. The question and answer designation for this project is the number 4. Please indicate 4A, the alphanumeric 4A for Owusu's presentation, and 4B for Tine's presentation. Thank you.
Well, greetings everybody from California. This is Phil Roberts, and I'm going to share with you our project area of interest 1.1, titled Development of Marker-Driven Improved Cowpea Varieties for West Africa Using Mature Markers. I wanted to first share the geographic focus of West Africa. We're working in the countries of Burkina Faso, Ghana, and Senegal, and introduce our collaborative team here. Along with myself, we have Bo Lam Huynh and Tim Close, co-PIs here at University of California, Riverside. In Burkina at Inara, we have Joseph Badiano. We have Francis Kusi in Ghana at Sari, Tamale. And then in Senegal at Isra and also Saras, we have Musa Dianga and his senior colleague Diaga Cisse. And I think everyone pretty much on the list here is participating in the global convening. So just a couple of background considerations, which I think anyone working in cowpea is very aware of. We have a highly nutritious legume, vital to food security. Real challenge is that the yields of smallholder farmers in the Sudan of Sahel are only typically about up to 20% of the known yield potential. The good news is we have downstream breeding technologies and tools that will allow us to advance cowpea quality and yield. And the project provides an excellent framework for host country capacity building, both in terms of degree training and ongoing scientist short-term training. We have 3 objectives in the project. These are sort of our global objectives. Objective 1, applying marker systems to add traits to elite African varieties. And I'll go over in some detail then on these. Objective 2 is taking lines that we've already bred through other projects and looking at their field performance in terms of yield and their quality and acceptance and nutrient value. And then third, using our marker technology tools for quality assurance of current and new varieties, seed stock purity and so on. So let me touch first on some key points of progress on Objective 1, where we're using MABC, which is marker assisted backcrossing. And in this program, as listed here, our team has selected 3 elite varieties, current varieties in each of the host countries. So they're doing pretty well already. And to those, using MABC to add in value-added traits, as it were, in terms of yield and grain quality. So you can see here a lot of emphasis on larger seed size in the different programs. In one case, breeding for earliness in Ghana. And then these other traits are biotic resistance targeted traits to insect, macrophyemina, soil fungus, and then parasitic weed striga, pest problems where we have marker tagged resistance traits that we can move in. For insects, aphids are important in Burkina and Ghana certainly, and then flower thrips is a focus in Senegal. So how are we progressing on this? It's a stepwise process. Early in the project, we made the first F1 crosses. So this is where we cross the elite variety, what we call the recurrent parent, with trait donor parents. So where the traits are that we're going to bring in. And then we back cross into the recurrent. So we have first generation back cross. We completed this process in 2020. In the last year, under this central panel, our focus has been on advancing this first generation backcross material. And so we repeatedly backcross, and then at each backcross generation, we use the marker technology to select plants that have the best background content, so most like the recurrent parent background, and then also foreground selection for the specific traits. So it's an iterative process, and we have got out to BC2, F2 generation with work completed in Ghana and Burkina. We've had some technical difficulty with the Senegal materials, so we're a bit behind on those, but nevertheless, the process then is to come forward with each of these generations. And currently in the most advanced materials, we have, with the second backcross generation, started intercrosses to stack the different traits into these elite lines. And then going out in 2022, we will continue this iterative process to develop lines that have fixed in them all the favorable alleles for the QTL target traits. Excuse me. Just to visualize some of this work, here's a greenhouse at Riverside where we are growing out early generation backcross materials produced and then sent from Ghana, used for collecting leaf tissue for genotype. And just to sort of emphasize here, we grow out in this panel on A, we grow out a high intensity of population, so lots of different plants. And then the marker information through genotyping allows us to eliminate most of the plants, and then we keep the ones that have the high background and trait content for the next cycle. And just to digress briefly, we've used this MABC process successfully to benefit U.S. agriculture under the program. And this has culminated in release of a new black eye variety, a dry grain variety, California Black Eye 77. I reported on this last year. This is where we took the standard grown CB46 variety and added aphid resistance donated from an African line. So this is a great example of a sort of a win-win in terms of the USAID funded US-Africa relationship. And in the last year since we talked, we have this registered in the Journal of Plant Registration, so a formal release that we hope will do very well. And I just wanted to enlarge the seed image here to show that besides the added aphid resistance, we also have a slightly whiter, brighter grain type in the new variety here on the right that we think will be most attractive to consumers compared to the current standard variety. So under Objective 2, I'd like to go very briefly through excuse me, highlights of what we're doing here. And this is where we're taking existing elite breeding materials or lines and then using field-based assessment in each of the host countries to determine which of the lines are appropriate for release as new varieties. And it also, these materials are also part of the cross-cutting nutrition project, which I'll touch on at the end here. So we have lines developed previously from marker-assisted recurrent selection, and then multi-parent advanced generation population materials. including some that we've previously intercrossed that we call super magic lines. So we have a set of 69 lines that we started off with. We developed breeder seeds at UCR and then have been collecting data on yield and grain quality, pest and disease response, and so on in the host country trials. In 2021, we had 4 location grow outs across the 3 host countries, and these then also tie in with the opportunity for training through farmer participatory variety selection. On the right, we have photos from this last summer main season showing grow outs of these elite materials used in our trials. And I just wanted to emphasize here, we have some of our degree training students providing presentations. I just give an example of 2 from Ghana here, Yor Nasamu and Samuel Owusu, who you'll be hearing from very shortly. Just to re-emphasize, we feel the project has value, certainly in terms of training and capacity building through 2 avenues. One is the lab and field-based project allows training in molecular breeding, both for on a continuing basis, the NARO staff, so the scientists and their lab staff, and then also the degree-based student training in the 3 host countries. And then in terms of the farmer training, the field trials are being used for participatory variety selection. So our stakeholders in the host countries are tied in. Okay, I'd like to just finish just for another minute or 2 with the cross-cutting theme project we have focused on cowpea nutrition. And as I said before, this ties in with the objective 2 elite line materials that we've been testing. And we've taken a set of these. We have selected 30 lines where we have completed now in 2021 a grain nutrient status analysis, where we're looking at sugars, protein, and some of the micronutrients. We produced grain samples in 2021. Earlier, these were used for the nutrient analyses, and then more recent samples will be used for 2022 sensory evaluation, taste evaluations, and cooking time tests. And this will be followed up with an education program on cowpea nutrition benefits. On the right is a magic line grown out in 2020 with particularly attractive grain. So one of the materials we're looking at. Again, just to emphasize, the grain samples are being produced, have been produced in the 3 host countries, and these have serviced the nutrient content assays and then set us up for the sensory evaluations. And I'll just finish here with a summary of the nutrient content analysis in our set of 30 elite materials and 6 local varieties. And the point I wanted to bring out here is that we have an excellent range from minimum to maximum content in each of the nutrients that we're interested in. So proteins, 23% to over 30% grain content. Good ranges for, this is parts per million for calcium, iron, and zinc. across the series of materials, and then sugars ranging from nearly 8% to over 13%. So we feel that the set of materials we have sets us up really well for a very useful sensory evaluation. So with that, I'll finish, and I really appreciate your time, and hopefully we have time for one or two questions. Thank you very much.
I'm presenting on preliminary phenotyping of advanced cowpea genotypes to select promising lines with multiple traits. Cowpea is a good source of dietary protein, cash, and fodder for livestock. Cowpea is drought and heat tolerant. It has a high yield potential, but the yields on farmers' field is low due to biotic factors such as pests and diseases, and abiotic factors ranging from salinity down to poor soil fertility. These factors has been the focus of research. So genotypes that withstand these factors have been developed or identified. That notwithstanding, farmers still record lower yields because they do not have access to these research materials. The objective of this study was to evaluate advanced breeding lines to identify superior agronomic performance under the Sudan Savannah zone of Ghana. The specific objectives were to determine the variability in the agronomic and yield characteristics of the cowpea genotypes, and to identify the potential assertions for further evaluation towards the release of new varieties, materials, and methods. The experiment was carried out at CSIR of Sari using 71 cowpea genotypes, out of which 3, namely Wankai, Apabala, and Kekausbenga, were the Czech genotypes, whilst the others were advanced breeding lines that had been selected for traits ranging from attractiveness to high yields. The trial was a randomized complete block design with 4 replications. Each plot was a single row of 2 meters, and seeds were planted at a planting distance of 20 centimeters between hills. Qualitative and quantitative data sets were collected based on crop descriptors. These data sets were analyzed using R. Results and discussions. On the field, 4 flower color types were identified: the purple flower, the white flower, the white with the purple margins, the white with the V-shaped purple pigmentation at the center. 49 of the accessions had white flowers, whilst 4 had purple flowers. Flower color is a predeterminant of seed coat color. In an experiment where seed coat color is the objective, flower color could be used to indirectly select for the seed coat color. Varying seed coat color and pattern were identified on the field. 59 of the accessions were either white or cream, 7 of them were mottled, 4 of them were solid brown, and these were from the purpled flowered plants, and one was black and white. Pod position. 38 of the accessions had their pod above the canopy, whilst 26 had their pods within the canopy. Pods above the canopy are easy to harvest, either mechanically or using manual means. Pods above the canopy are also easy to monitor for pest and disease damage and to control them than when the pods are within the canopy. Table 2 shows the summary statistics of measured agronomic traits. Flowering of the cowpea genotypes was between 34 days to 52 days and averaged at 37 days for the earliest flowering genotype, whilst maturity ranged from 60 days to 82 days, averaging at 66 days. Grain yield, on the other hand, ranged from 865 to 3,349 kilograms per hectare and averaged at 1,991 kilograms per hectare. Principal component analysis showed the contribution scores and correlation of the agronomic traits to the principal components. Days to flowering and days to maturity were positively correlated with the first principal component, while grain yield and biomass yield were negatively correlated with the first principal component. Plant height was correlated with the fourth principal component, whilst 100 seed weight was also correlated with the second principal component. The distribution of the genotypes and the traits measured on the principal component by plot are presented in Figure 5. The cluster analysis further grouped the genotypes into 6 clusters. Cluster 1 was made up of the high-yielding genotypes with an average yield of 2,818 kilograms per hectare. Cluster 2, on the other hand, was the early maturing cowpea genotypes, flowering at 35 days after planting and maturing as early as 64 days after planting. Cluster 3 and Cluster 6 were within the early maturing group. Likewise, Cluster 5, all flowering within the range of 35 to 37 days after planting and maturing within a maximum of 67 days after planting. Cluster 4, however, made up of only one genotype, was the late maturing cluster and also the cluster with the highest biomass yield. Figure 6 shows the dendrogram view of the genotypes after the cluster analysis. Clusters 2 and 5 and 3 were genotypes with appreciable yields, which matures within the early maturity bracket and could fit into the Sudan savanna growing season. Conclusion: short duration cowpea has become a priority in the dry savannas due to the ever shortening rainy season. Genotypes such as Mars 16, Mars 2, Supermagic 78, among others, were identified as early maturing high-yielding genotypes with plant and pod architecture that cowpea growers within the region prefer. Multi-location evaluation of these promising lines is needed to confirm their performance. We would like to acknowledge the support of our donors and our collaborators, especially from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, CSIR SARI, University of California, Riverside. Thank you for your attention.
Bonsoir tout le monde. Je m'appelle Asitine. Ceci est une présentation visuelle des résultats de mes travaux de recherche qui a pour titre Amélioration de la germination de la graine de niébé par technique de trompage. Le niébé est une importante légumineuse à graines, tant pour ses bienfaits nutritionnels, mais aussi pour avoir été reconnue comme l'une des meilleures solutions et la moins coûteuse face aux défis de la malnutrition dans le monde, notamment en Afrique. Il occupe une place de choix dans le système de production. Dans le monde, il occupe 2,5 millions d'hectares avec une production estimée entre 3,1 à 3,3 millions de tonnes de graines. En Afrique, principale zone de production et de consommation du niébé, 9,8 millions d'hectares sont cultivés, assurant ainsi 64% de la production annuelle mondiale. Au Sénégal, 93% des terres cultivées sont occupées par le niébé, distribuées ainsi Thiès 20%, Diourbel 25%, Louga 48%. Malgré son aptitude face aux conditions de culture défavorables, la production du niébé rencontre d'énormes contraintes liées aux irrégularités pluviométriques, à la baisse de la fertilité des sols, à l'attaque des insectes et aux maladies. Ces contraintes affectent considérablement la germination, qui est un pilier indispensable pour une bonne production. Par ailleurs, les premières pluies ne sont plus assez importantes. Cependant, certains producteurs prennent le risque de semer durant cette période, source d'une mauvaise germination et par la suite d'une production insatisfaisante. Ces petites perturbations pluvieuses deviennent une vraie catastrophe vis-à-vis de la production végétale, accompagnée de l'absence de stratégie rapide et durable. En effet, il est temps de repenser l'agriculture en promouvant la technique de pré-traitement à l'hypochlorite de sodium. Partons du fait que des tests ont été réalisés au Maroc, au Bénin et au Niger sur d'autres sortes de graines avec un taux de réussite allant jusqu'à 95%. Donc, la technique de pré-traitement des semences pourrait être un moyen efficace, rapide et durable contre les mauvaises germinations. L'objectif général visé dans cette étude a été l'amélioration du potentiel de rendement du niébé en améliorant la germination de la graine à l'aide de pré-traitement à l'hypochlorite de sodium. Les objectifs spécifiques étant l'identification du temps de trompage optimal de la graine à l'hypochlorite de sodium et l'identification du volume d'eau optimal pour améliorer la vitesse de germination. Le matériel végétal utilisé était composé de 3 variétés à caractéristiques morphologiques différentes. Il y a une grosse graine de couleur rouge, une grosse graine de couleur blanche et la MP1 qui nous a servi de témoin, une petite graine de couleur crème. La solution à 1% de NaCl préparée préalablement nous a permis de stériliser et de traiter le matériel végétal, mais aussi les autres matériels expérimentaux. Le traitement statistique des données a été fait à l'aide du logiciel GenStat. Pour les résultats, l'importance des variances ont été observées sur la vitesse de germination des graines. La presque totalité des facteurs ont interagi de manière significative avec des variances de 70,55, 10 puissance moins 5, 12,54, 10 puissance moins 4 et 11,64, 10 puissance moins 4 pour respectivement temps de trompage génotype volume, temps de trompage génotype et temps de trompage volume. Les variances ont impliqué, la plupart des variances ont impliqué le temps de trompage et le génotype en tandem. Il a été fait une comparaison des différents génotypes par rapport au volume de trompage, par rapport au temps de trompage, mais aussi par rapport au volume d'eau optimal. Les performances des différents génotypes ont été observées après l'application du décontaminant et à des temps de trompage différents. Les meilleures vitesses pour le contrôle 0,042, Yasin 0,042 et TI 0,03 ont été obtenues à 70 puissance 3, 420 10 puissance 3 et 720 10 puissance 3 millisecondes respectivement. En effet, la caractéristique agromorphologique dominante, qui était une grosse graine, a mis beaucoup plus de temps à réaliser ses meilleures performances en termes de taux de germination et d'engorgement, alors que la graine de petite taille a eu une performance considérable due à sa capacité de pré-traitement à une durée de 70 puissance 3 millisecondes. Il est donc remarquable que les différences de perméabilité peuvent engendrer une variabilité de la vitesse de germination des graines d'une même population. Et on peut donc en déduire que les caractéristiques agromorphologiques des graines de niébé et les différents temps de traitement peuvent avoir une influence considérable sur la vitesse de germination à l'opposé du volume d'eau qui n'a eu aucun effet sur celle-ci. Cette étude nous a permis de conclure que l'application d'un volume de l'hypochlorite de sodium à des temps de trompage différents peut avoir un effet considérable sur la vitesse de germination. Ces résultats peuvent être considérés comme un avancement dans les programmes de sélection variétale. Les perspectives qui ont été dégagées sont d'intensifier les recherches pour extrapoler cette expérimentation au niveau champ et agir indirectement sur le rendement, d'établir un protocole expérimental à l'échelle et d'identifier des témoins pour des expériences similaires impliquant le plus grand nombre de génotypes. Ceci étant dit, nécessitant un financement solide. Merci.
I want to thank that team for their great presentations. I'd like to also invite Dr. Roberts to join me on camera for the question and answer period. Just a reminder, the students will not be answering questions, but if you would like to direct questions to the students, you can label them once again with their presentation number. For Ansa Samuel, it is 4A, and for Tine, Astutine, it is 4B. Once again, that is for Ansa Samuel, that's 4A, and for Astutine, it is 4B. And a couple of these questions I think were for you, Phil, so I'm going to start with these. You said that the varietal development was market demand driven. Can you share how you determined the market analysis? What factors did you take into account there?
Yeah, that's a good question with could have a long answer. I think it's really based on in the host countries, the experience and previous analyses within those countries in terms of consumer preferences and what's happened in the marketplace. So the emphasis on larger seed size, grain type, white grain as a color, these would be examples where there's clear evidence through market analysis that there are preferences. Mm-hmm. I think the other thing we're trying to do with the participatory breeding effort, and then beyond that with the nutrition, sensory evaluations and so on, is to get a better look at what the local preferences are as we go forward with the new materials. Mm-hmm. But we have these targets that are either known through analysis, like the examples I gave, or implied. So with our higher nutrition or nutrient content analyses, you know, more protein in the grain would be you know, a target that's not currently sort of obvious in the marketplace, but would be complementary to some of the, the grain quality traits. And obviously yield, is a major component.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. So in selection of the varieties, did you involve gender disaggregation? In other words, did you look at male and female preference criteria? And if so, what were the specific preferences? Did they differ from male to female?
I don't know to what extent we've done a disaggregation. I can say that in our work so far in the host countries, and I think that question can probably be more accurately answered if we can hook it into the Q&A panel, so we can have some of the host country partners respond. But all I can say at this point is we have, and I think we've reported on this, a high proportion of women farmers participating, and certainly will do in the sensory evaluations. I don't know, I'm not sure we've disaggregated male to female preference. A lot of the grower groups we're working with in the host countries are women-based. So I think the data would be available for that based on our participatory efforts. And so that's something we could build on.
Yeah, that might be another future cross-cutting grant.
Yeah.
So we don't have time for a lot of questions yet, but I wanted to get this one in. Are you on track to reach registration by August 2023? And if so, with which varieties and in which countries?
Yeah, this is a sort of continuing question about, okay, when a variety is going to be registered as releases. I would say we will not have registered releases of the host country focus varieties by what's equivalent to this time next year. We need the 2022 field assessment, as our Ghana student rightly touched on, the need for broader testing in regions. What's the regionality potential for varieties? But we will have, particularly in the elite materials, we will have whittled down to a subset of, I'm thinking less than 10 probably, but the best lines out of this work, and those then will go into the registration and release process. Hopefully some of them will be regionally valuable, because the same materials are being tested in each of the host countries. So across the West African region.
Yeah. Okay, we'll have to stop it there, Phil. There are a number of questions in the question and answer panel. If you have a chance, if you could give some written responses to that, and also Ansa Samuel and Astu, if you could answer some of those questions, I'm sure that those who asked them will be greatly appreciative. So that concludes our question and answer session. Thank you once again, Dr. Roberts, for that presentation. Our fifth and final research project presentation of the day is promoting trade integration in regional legume markets with mobile technology. This project is also ongoing and is led by Dr. Michael Olabisi of Michigan State University. And presenting today on behalf of the project is Dr. Michael Olabisi. The question and answer designations for this project is the number 5, the number 5.
Hello, and welcome to this session of the annual global convening of the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Legume Systems. We're excited to share with you an update for our project, which, as the title suggests, is promoting trade integration in regional legume markets with mobile technology. This project has as a team members Professor Crawford, Dr. Marish Maridia, partners in Nigeria, Drs. Ajaybe and Ajibade, who are with Bayo University in Kano and the University of Ilorin, respectively, and our technical partners, Victoria Garden Group, Venture Garden Group, VGG, Lagos, Nigeria, as well as Dr. Dennis Phillips of Michigan State, who supported our project with reviews. The goal for our project is to improve information systems for legume value chains by providing information to those in the value chain, that's farmers and sellers. And that goal is very much aligned with the lab's goal, AOI2, as shown above. And our approach to addressing this goal is the development of a virtual marketplace that users of mobile phones can access from any market, any of the key markets in West Africa. Just to give you a quick overview of the project, we are in phase 2, and the phase 1, some of which we updated you last year, was where we started the process of developing the app. We tested the app extensively with users, farmers, sellers, resellers in between. We had focused discussions with those, and in June of last year, after the last convening, we deployed the app. And this was after we gathered data on the initial level of interest in the app. Phase 2, which we are currently engaged in, is about expanding usage within Nigeria and going beyond Nigeria to expand usage into Niger. So we have both Francophone and Anglophone West Africa covered. The idea is once we have these 2 markets covered, it should be easy to step forward into other Anglophone or Francophone West African markets. The name Kasuago, which is the name of our virtual marketplace, derives from the Hausa word Kasua, which means market, and the English word go, which, as I mentioned, is a virtual marketplace that allows all parties in the value chain to share information to support decisions about buying and selling. To be clear, the app is more about connecting for information. We do not have things like payments built in, and delivery. All of those are done outside of the app. Our expectation and our motivation for getting this intervention as part of our program centers on facilitating trade across geographic and language or cultural boundaries within the region. Our assessment is that intra-regional trade, and by that intra within the region trade, is less than it could be, and that information frictions may be responsible as a barrier to trade. And our work is examining the impact of technology as a means for breaking down those barriers to trade. The phone in the picture shows the Kasuago app. This was at one of our launch events. And any smartphone that's Android can use the app. In terms of updates, we are delighted to say that version 1 of the app we completed the design after robust tests and reviews and rechecks with stakeholders. We had a robust design and decision review process with our partners, Dr. Ajibade and Dr. Ajaybe, who not just spoke on a regular basis with the technical partners, but channeled some of the feedback from that to the sellers and farmers who are stakeholders. And this is in addition to the focus group discussions where we actually showed draft versions of the apps to our stakeholders. The app launch, we will say, is a success. At the end of June 2021, last year, we had market leaders, especially youth and women, present. And we followed up after the launch of the app with outreach to communities outside of the key areas, which are the big cities, Ilorin and Kano, that are the centers of the core markets that our projects based out of. And we expect that phase 2, which we are currently ongoing, will be the time where we start to see a broader adoption and usage of the app. Some of the pictures I will show you here show the launch events. The launch event in Kano we're thankful and we're very happy that We had market leaders from all the major markets that were now, which is Africa's largest, West Africa's largest grain market, had representatives there. Other markets in the area showed up. Academics from BUK, our partners, based the youth and women groups all showed up to see the demonstration, to ask questions and engage with us. In Ilorin, we had market leaders. We had the State Commissioner for Commerce, which is as a representative of the governor of the state, the university vice chancellor, which is the equivalent of the president. Again, women groups all were present, all engaged with us, all were happy to see this app as a tool to support their businesses. The outreach that has followed the launch of the app, as of January, is covered just about every region in Nigeria, and since it's still ongoing, so I can announce to you that if I give you the data as of yesterday, you have more states in the southern part of Nigeria that look less covered have already been reached by the outreach of our teams that have gone to markets to ask people, have you heard of Kasua Go? What do you know about Kasua Go? And is this something that could be useful to you? The outreach, we believe, has also given us a chance to take a snapshot of who's in the market and who could be using this. And you do see that we have fairly reasonable coverage with the majority of the people that we spoke, that we found in markets being retailers, which is not surprising. A smaller number of resellers and an even smaller number of farmers of the nearly 14,000 people that we spoke with as of January of this year. We are particularly excited to see that even though we do not have women, the population in the markets is not gender balanced by a long shot, but the youth are fairly well represented in all the categories, even including farmers, where you typically, it's been a challenge getting the youth to be engaged in farming. And to be clear, the definition for youth for this presentation is age below age 30. The outreach, again, the success of the outreach can be seen in this graph, which shows you the people who registered, which means they entered the market system and became registered users, eligible to buy and sell on the app, eligible to post information from buying and selling, forgive me, on the app. And September, which was the main thrust of our initial push for outreach, also coincided with the largest increase or largest number of people joining the Kasua Go ecosystem as buyers and sellers. To be clear, what we're showing you as registration is the separate step from downloading the app from the Android store. So these are people who not just downloaded the app, but they followed through on the download and registered. If you want to know how these registered users are distributed around Nigeria, again, as of January, you'll see that we pretty much have nationwide coverage. So almost all the states in Nigeria have at least one registered user. And even states that as of January we have not reached with our outreach teams, it looks like word of mouth, all the means to allow people to learn of this app and download them, as you can see here. This information, by the way, came from the server on the back end that documents who's registered as an app user. The app users who are registered look fairly different from the people who can find the market if you compare this graph with the previous one. So again, I guess the notable thing here is it's a more gender balanced group compared to the market as a whole, even if it's not perfectly gender balanced, and you have more youth representation among those who are registered to use the app, which as of January was about 650. Our expectation is that, again, as more people enjoy and benefit from using the app, and as our outreach teams continue to stay in touch with the markets, that those numbers will go up. And also we expect that as our outreach team connects with more youth and women groups, that you see more of these previously less represented groups be part of the market, that is the digital markets for food value chains, legume value chains. The Google Play Store, where the downloads start from, also allows us to see the data. So you can see that from the Google Play Store, we're able to see data that says as of January, they had about 1,100 visitors to the app landing page, which is included in the link here. And of those 1,100 visitors, about 69% proceeded to actually download the app. And of that 765, you see that there was 650 on the previous slide that went out to register after downloading the app. The timing, of course, corresponds to outreach, as I mentioned in the last slide. And for us, it's clear that this could be an opportunity for engaging youth who are typically more comfortable and proficient with technology like smartphone technology, with supporting the outreach to sellers and buyers in the legume value chain markets. So our next steps as planned is to have a focus group discussions for a version 2 of the app, which is based on feedback from new potential users and feedback from users who have stuck with the Kasuago ecosystem on the things that they prefer and things that would like to change or things they may want to drop, as well as feedback from users in Niger, the neighboring country, who are French speaking and who have other languages that they may want to include, so that the app reflects more of the preferences, not just of Nigerian users, but other users around West Africa. To be clear, as we have right now, based on the past focus group discussions, the app includes English, Hausa, Yoruba, and Nupe, 3 Nigerian languages. We have a French version draft that's not yet deployed to the App Store as part of our preparation for making the app available and usable for users outside of Nigeria in French-speaking West Africa. So our goal is that in 2022, between March and July, to have 2 rounds of focus discussions in Niamey, Ilorin, and Kano, Niamey is the Niger Republic, to solicit these feedback and get users to tell us what they would like the next version of the app look like. Beyond just the app, we understand, and this is based on our outreach, that a large share of our people in the market, especially farmers, do not have smartphones. They have smartphones, and I could give you a number. The number we have is about 96%, but about 86% of the people in the market have a phone of some kind, and of that, only about 47% have smartphones, which is concentrated more among the resellers and retailers. So to ensure that farmers who predominantly use phones, feature phones like what you see in the picture, but not smartphones, we are in the process of developing a USSD-based interface, USSD being unstructured supplementary service data that allows, by typing text-based information into the system, engage with the market, like for example, saying, we state the number quantity at, enter the text location of select from the menu an item for sale at a particular date, and people with either another feature phone or the app, what's on the smartphone, can locate such potential sellers and connect with them using the app ecosystem. In addition to the work in terms of intervention and outreach, we are working on capacity development, which includes engaging with the youth in Nigeria, as well as taking some of those to come to Michigan State University for a 1 semester research visit, where they will take classes and have a non-degree affiliation with Michigan State University. While they're here, their research visitors will also visit to further again embed these researchers in our approach to research and engagement And when they are done with their 1 semester of research visit, we expect them to go back to Nigeria and train their colleagues and fellow students with the things that they learned, especially how to add value to legume value chains. Another of our work that we're excited that's coming up, and actually it's just about starting as I'm speaking to you, is a cross-cutting project that's linked to our current project, which we are doing in partnership with the Legume Systems Innovation Lab as a special funded project, where we engage with the youth and teach them how to use the Legume, that teach them how to engage with the value chain, sellers and farmers and stakeholders, and send them out as effectively digital extension agents who will work to support users as they learn to use that. We think this will be a win-win-win in that it helps us promote and support adoption of the technology. It also helps the youth engage more with the legume value chains, as well as helping the farmers and sellers be better users, or more proficient users of the Kasuago and USSD ecosystem. So in terms of future research opportunities and questions, we're excited for what comes next because we have data that we expect to translate into research with meaningful insights. We expect, as I mentioned earlier, to adapt our technology to a broader user base that's potentially able to facilitate engagement across all of West Africa, but with 2 countries as our targets, Nigeria and Nigeria, and find trusted partners to run the platform beyond the end of this project. We're already looking at 2023 as the end of this phase where we will have a trusted partner take over the work. So thank you again for your attention. We are thankful once more to the lab for supporting us financially and in other ways. And we look forward to hearing from you and taking your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Olavisi, for that presentation. Very interesting. I think this is probably the future of agricultural systems. So we're glad that we're on the cutting edge here. A couple of questions that popped up. One is one that you partially answered, but maybe you could elaborate a little bit. What are the plans for the app after the project ends? How does it continue? What kind of transition are you planning for it?
Thank you, John, and thank you to everyone who's attending for your attention. Our goal is to find trusted partners who already are in the space, either in terms of commerce, banking, or logistics in West Africa, to transfer the ownership of the app to them and effectively just license to them, while we hopefully maintain a research relationship so that the data from this marketplace can be useful for generating insights as to how legume markets work and can be improved for the benefit of the Africans that are the stakeholders of our project.
Mm-hmm. And you said that they're private sector, is that correct?
Exactly, yes. We do have people who we talk to who are outside the private sector, but it's our firm belief that the private sector is best positioned to drive this initiative.
Yeah, great. Second question is, what volume of trade is taking place on the app currently? And what does it represent in terms of overall trade, like a percentage of overall trade? I imagine it's rather small at this point, but do you have projections for growth over the coming years, or can you see a growth trend in the number of people who are using the app currently?
Yeah, thank you, John. The short answer is you are right. It's a very, very small number. I mean, we're talking less than a couple of $1,000 that's actually observed transactions so far. But what we are happy about is actually that people are using the app. They're using it to do more shopping than, well, like shopping, I mean, they scour the market to see what the prices are elsewhere. So people actually are signing on, checking to see what prices are. We don't see much by way of transaction, which is expected at this stage. Mm-hmm. But our expectation is that as more people explore prices on the platform, that at least at first with their own trusted partners that they knew or that they know from outside the network, they'll start to trade, and then we'll see a broader use.
Okay. And then I think we have time for one more question. I see from the data shared that there was a spike on the use of the app during its launch, or the number of people who registered. Is the team also monitoring active users of the app for the last 6 months, for example? And if yes, will data supporting this metric be used for phase 2 to support software development, engagement, outreach activities beyond just broader awareness?
Thank you, John. The answer is yes, and yes, and yes. We are very happy that we have a technical partner in the Venture Garden Group that helps us to kind of stay on top of basically everything I showed you, both who's going to the Google Play Store to look at the app, to who's downloading the app on Google Play Store, and 3, who's actually registering. So this helps us to, like I mentioned, for example, we part of our efforts to make sure that we get younger people involved, especially young women involved in the value chain, and we can see that data. And therefore, as we continue to do things like arrange for focus group discussions and engage with stakeholders to, so to say, to what should the app look like next, we're able to target our efforts based on the data that we can see.
Mm-hmm. Great, and I'm assuming that the app can be a platform for other commodities as well in the future. Is that correct?
That is correct, John. And in fact, the app as it is right now is designed by default. Once you load the app, you have about 10 grains that you can buy or sell on it. 2 kinds of cowpea, or sorghum, millet, rice, groundnut. I'll skip the rest, but it's designed primarily for legumes, but because legumes are sold as grains in bags, and the quality features are fairly common across these items, other grains can enjoy this app.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you, Dr. Olabisi. That was a great presentation and very inspiring. We hope that this takes off. With that, we'll conclude our research presentations. Thank you all for listening, and back over to you, Jan.
Thanks, John. And many thanks to all of our presenters today. This concludes the public forum of the Legume Systems Innovation Lab's Virtual Convening 2022 Day 1. If you have not yet participated in today's poll by sharing your favorite legume recipe or dish, please take a minute to do so in the poll section in Whova. Also check out the community feature where you can engage with other attendees and find additional resource materials. Student posters can be viewed by clicking on the posters tab. And tomorrow we will be announcing the 2 winners of our student poster competition. So today's presentation presenters will also continue to work to provide written responses to all questions addressed during their presentation today. And so look for their answers in the session Q&A feature of Whova. Also feel free to contact them via the messaging feature also in Whova. So we look forward to having you joining us for tomorrow's session, which begins at 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Thank you for your participation, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.